Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support the show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Salutations, everybody. It is Maddie here today, and welcome to episode 94 of Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast. Today, I am joined by the mayor, the associate producer of Last Stand Media, Ben Smith. Ben, how are you?
I'm good, man. How you doing? The mayor. I don't know if I'll ever lose that title.
No, you can't shake it off.
No.
It sounds too good. It's a hot title. That's the thing. It sounds
It is, yeah.
sexy.
I'm still pulling. I mean, I've said this before here with you, but I'm still pulling for you to call me the honorable. Like, I feel like I will be satisfied in multiple ways.
Oh.
If that happens.
Oh. Well, Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks,
Today, Cog is not joining us. He is in Ireland right now. He's currently working really hard for Zuckerberg, so he will not be with us this week. He won't be on this week's DDU or next week's, but I got some good episodes in the can for y'all. This last one we just did for DDU was a legal deep dive with Hogue Law. And another topic here in this episode, one that I know the audience is showing some fatigue on, but it's about the CMA and Microsoft and getting a more legal analysis of things that are transpiring. Of course, we recorded that episode and then more happened, but nothing really was missing from that conversation. But I digress. That'll be available. And then we are recording a special interview this week, which I never count on these interviews. It's always sketchy, but that is a part of the plan, and that should be recorded tomorrow. So you have a lot of good stuff to look forward to despite Cog's absence, but he will be back for next week's full episode.
He's over there with my people.
Yes.
Infecting them with the Zuck.
Yes.
And the Facebook.
See, now we can really get our meta shit talk on.
That's right.
Cog's not here. All right. So as always, we like to begin with a lot of little news bits that don't make the full news section with the big article write-up. But I'd like to turn our attention to a member of the audience because I do recall the initial write-in, and I always like to have these follow-ups and build the relationship. Infinite writes in, "Good afternoon, boys. As you may remember, 10 weeks ago, I put in a comment that I was heading out to Navy boot camp. Well, that mission has been accomplished, and I am further pursuing my military career, now aided by the sweet sound of Defining Duke in my ears. Excited to catch up on quite the bit of a backlog here and see what has happened in my absence. As always, I have nothing but respect for the work you put into every piece of content you publish. Keep killing it, boys." So thank you, Infinite. We hope you are doing well. We appreciate your service. But I always like to just hear from the audience, see what y'all are up to as my camera rotates here. There we go. But let's keep going. Let's get into a hot topic here. Sotelo74 writes in, "Hey, Dukes, longtime listener, but first time write-in. Welcome to the show, Sotelo. Are you guys at all interested in Gotham Knights coming out this week? With the shitstorm that was Twitter this weekend about the game being 30 FPS, some reporting the frames still dropping on next-gen consoles because of the Potato Series S, and one of the devs being bullied off of Twitter, what is going on? I was still somewhat interested in the game, but now I'm not too sure anymore. Sorry for the long question, but have so many games coming out soon, but not enough time kind of day. Thank you, Sotelo." So yeah, I wanted to kick this one off with some hot news here. Gotham Knights, by the time this episode's out for free feed listeners, you'll have the game in your hands. Reviews will be out, which is a sketchy process unto itself. I can offer some insight on that. But Ben, I want to dish it to you because I've been talking a lot here in the early going. How do you feel about this 30 FPS debate? It also popped up with a Plague Tale Requiem day one on Game Pass where it's 40 FPS with VRR. A lot of people have been talking again about, do we go with fidelity? Do we go with frame rate? Is it acceptable that a game's dropping without a 60 FPS option? Sorry, ate my words there. How are you feeling about the Gotham Knights situation?
Well, first I'll say I'm not really sure if I wasn't totally sold on Gotham Knights in the first place. Like, it looked interesting. It kind of looked like, oh, okay, once this drops, the first price drop or something, maybe I'll grab it. But it wasn't something that I was like, I got to buy this day one. So I might be a little skewed because my perspective was not like super hyped for the game.
Sure.
So anything's going to make me be like, okay, whatever. I think that the average gamer, if we look at all the gamers out there, probably don't care that much. about 30 FPS.
Mm.
It's the hardcore. It's the people listening to the show. It's you and I. It's people who are invested deeply in the ecosystem. Now, a lot of people might notice that something's different and not really understand why, but I'm not sure that if you went and polled the average person who's buying a new game, that they're going to care or even notice the difference between 30 and 60 FPS or even 40 FPS. With that said, it sucks. Like, it totally sucks. The people who do notice are really going to care and are really going to notice. And it's 2022. We have brand new consoles, essentially. There's no reason that a new game can't be 60 FPS or at least somewhere near it.
Yeah, that's the thing, is I feel like with the Plague Tale Requiem, you're not there, but at least you're almost there. You're in the 40s, but straight 30 with frame drops being reported. I find it really disappointing that it turned into a Series S conversation, because I feel it just knocks the conversation down a peg when it's clear this game just wasn't optimized properly, especially when you look at some of the PC requirements. You didn't need a high-level graphics card for this one, so something wasn't working right here on the consoles end of things. And people were doing side-by-side comparisons, as they always do, with Arkham Knight, for example, versus Gotham Knights, and Arkham Knights look a little more detailed in certain respects. So I just, obviously we don't know what's going on underneath the hood here. It's hard to tell from a bird's eye view, but I'm of the mindset that we need to mandate, like, make your concessions and get it working at 60 FPS. That has to happen. Like, people just want to have that option. It's been a standard for a while now, really starting with, I'd say, like the PS4 Pro and the One X, but now with the new generation, it was always you can expect this. So I think it's going to hurt them a little bit, but I agree with you on the sense that it's not going to tank their sales. We're talking about a big DC property here.
Yeah.
My biggest concern has always been the combat. And now knowing that there's not going to be a 60 FPS option with that combat, I don't know, man. I'm avoiding it with my console, that's for sure.
Well, there's two things about this. One is that, can you imagine, like, the industry congratulated them for dropping last series consoles. I can't imagine, or last gen consoles. I can't imagine what this game would have looked like on the Xbox One.
That's true. I almost
Are you
forgot
kidding
about
me?
that.
Like, no way. Now, I applaud them that they did that, but it seems like if they could only get it run at 30 FPS on everything else, then the other thing is, I want to defend Little Man here, as Cog calls it, because the Series S, it's not the Series X. It's not the top of the line console. It certainly has weaker performance, but the Series S slaps, man. I mean, like, I play a lot of games on my Series S. I play most of my games on my PC, and a majority of those through Game Pass, but the Series S didn't stop this game from being 60 FPS. There's absolutely no way. I've played the new Forza.
Yeah,
and it's beautiful.
It comes down to the developers a lot of the time. Like, I remember with Cyberpunk, when they first launched the next gen enhancements, they were trying to say, like, oh, we couldn't do 60 FPS with 1440p on the Series S. People were like, come on, give us a break. And then a couple months later, here it is. Here's Series S gameplay with the performance mode, and it works well. So yeah, it's just a matter of time. I imagine they will add this after launch, but it's just adding weight to what you mentioned earlier about people are going to we're kind of in the middle, at least in the hardcore space, on I might wait for a sale. And now I think this has really solidified that decision for a lot of people. For me, I didn't really, I was going to try to review the game, but that has been an extremely cagey process. So here on the outside, we're recording this on the 19th, trying to break in to get a review copy for this game. I've worked with like Warner Bros. A lot. This was a very different experience. It was like that they were hiding this game. So I'm not anticipating great things. We'll see. But I'm not really holding my breath for this game right now. All right, next on the list here, Avowed. In the Xbox world here, we have a leak, unsurprisingly, but this one does not come from Jez Corden. Got to make that one clear. But it's a screenshot leak here. There's not a ton to take away from in the terms of context, other than you see a spell being woven with the hand animations, and it's a nice set of greenery here, but apparently this was a screenshot from an old build dating back to at least over a year ago now. So it's not indicative of the final product, but it's reignited the conversation here again, Ben, with Avowed and people's excitement for it. And of course, a lot of folks have really started to wonder again when we're actually going to see this game, because Obsidian said last Xbox Showcase, or I'm sorry, I should say 2021's Xbox Showcase, that they'd be showing Avowed soon. Now, here we are a year and change later. We haven't seen it. So everyone's moving the goalposts again alongside me. Like, okay, let's see this Game Awards. Maybe I was saying that last year that was going to be the Game Awards, but here we are now, still nothing. Obviously, this leak I don't think indicates that there's going to be a reveal soon. But you'd have to imagine with the conversation ignited again, we're starting to think it's time. Do you think it's time to see Avowed? And of course, what are your thoughts on the screenshot?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably time. But I also am very much in the camp of don't rush things because, I mean, I don't want them to rush it. I don't want them to put out gameplay that, pulls a Craig or something that just looks bad and really destroys the image of the game. And maybe that's not anywhere near what it is. As for the screenshot, like, it's a screenshot. Like, I don't know. Like, it's a couple years old. We saw the announced trailer, and of course that was CGI, but we saw that there were going to be spells you could cast with your hands. We knew that already. We've had other info about that come out. So, like, yeah, it's cool to get a screenshot, but if I'm going to see a screenshot and get excited about a game, it can't be from 3 years ago. So, I never say I'm excited for a game until like it's a week out from the game coming out. Quite honestly, that there are some exceptions there, but this is the same situation. I'm sure it's going to be at least good, if not great, but I can't garner anything from the screenshot that we haven't heard or seen before.
Yeah, exactly. It's nice to lay eyes on it. And what I think was the most affirming quality to it was perhaps that it's exactly what I expected it to look like. It had that Skyrim energy because, of course, what we saw was CG. You don't know how that translates to gameplay, and especially gameplay years later. And to see it and go, okay, this is looking like Obsidian Skyrim, whereas The Outer Worlds was Obsidian's Fallout. Yeah. It felt, okay, this is right. This is the feel I was looking for. So I don't want to take too much time soaking in this image just because there's very little to get out of it. But that was, to me, like the biggest takeaway.
You're going to do an hour-long video on it tomorrow, Maddie.
Oh, video's already up on it. Oh, okay. Video's already up on it. Don't worry. Come on. I can't let these types of things go because I'm with Cog that I think Obsidian, they're going to be a big talking point this episode because we're going to talk about their desire to make a new Fallout game. Yeah. They really are right now looking to be like the early MVPs for the new era of Xbox with like what they're delivering here in 2022 with Grounded being fantastic, Pentiment. Now we're seeing these leaked screenshots, and we've heard many leaks in the past for Avowed, but there's a lot of anticipation for what's to come because they're now delivering small and hopefully down the line big. And then you think of their future beyond that with a franchise like Fallout. There's so much to be excited about with Obsidian and their current leadership and where they stand as a studio. So we will discuss them a lot. But before we do that, let's talk about Silent Hill. So there was a reveal event this week, and coincidentally, I just played Silent Hill 2 for the first time this last weekend. Yeah. I did not know anything about this event, but I finish it up. I'm getting ready to do my retro rebound video, and I see, hey, there's this Silent Hill 2 event that's going to be dropping called Silent Hill Transmission. Here's what was announced. Silent Hill 2 Remake by Bloober Team. This is a PS5 console exclusive and PC release for at least 12 months. Afterwards, it can come to Xbox. Silent Hill Townfall was announced by No Code, who are the developers of Stories Untold and Observation. Silent Hill Ascension by GenVid Entertainment, which is a real-time live interactive series where fans watch and make decisions together. And Silent Hill F was also announced by Neobards Entertainment. This was the developer of Resident Evil Reverse. Probably not the biggest vote of confidence here, but they're also responsible for the next-gen versions of Resident Evil 2, 3 Remake, as well as Resident Evil 7. Now, some extra details on Silent Hill F may actually be a bit intriguing to those out there who pay attention to the visual novel space, as it's going to be written by the creator of Higurashi and Umineko. His name is Ryukishi07. This is their kind of anonymous name that they go by. I don't think anyone knows the actual author's real name, but it's a news story set in the 1960s Japan dealing with murder mysteries, as well as psychological and supernatural horror. Now, according to the visual novel communities, like these are the top of the top. Like I've always been a big champion of Zero Escape and Danganronpa famously, but these two I'm just hearing about now, and anything I see about it is saying like these are the top dogs in the space because they're horror visual novel games that are just exceptionally good. So I don't know much about them. I haven't played them, but that may be encouraging to those out there. It may also give you an idea of what direction they're going in with Silent Hill F. But Ben, from top to bottom, has anything here in this list of Silent Hill reveals caught your attention because, Konami seems to be back, right? We're seeing them with Suikoden, Silent Hill. They just did the Cowabunga collection. They seem to be dipping into their catalog, but this is really their first statement of what they're doing moving forward that doesn't involve too much of remasters, collections, that type of stuff.
Yeah. I only ever played Silent Hill, the first game. I've never played any of the other games, so I'll just start off by saying that. I was watching the trailer actually right before you sent me the link or the presentation. It looks cool. I would be glad for my first time through Silent Hill 2 to be an updated version of it. I'm a little disappointed in this Bloober team. Like they've kind of, I don't know. I kind of feel like they're redeeming themselves. Yeah, I kind of feel like they're redeeming themselves a little bit, but they just haven't proven themselves. So for me to get excited once again about a game that's coming from Bloober team, it's going to have to be really good. I have almost no background other than knowing that it's a famed franchise that I should really invest in with Silent Hill, other than the first one. I played that around the time it came out. So for me, I mean, it's all new. It's all exciting to some extent. I am interested in the Japan setting for Silent Hill F. Although Silent Hill F, I'm sure that's probably not, I don't know, maybe that is, but probably not the final name. And if it is, they should consider changing it because it's terrible. But other than that, no, I mean, anything that creates industry hype, which this Silent Hill creates industry hype, I'm all about. So,
yeah, I am very intrigued by this Silent Hill 2 remake. As many people who have been listening to this show since the start will know that myself and Carrick especially really dragged the medium. Like that game I thought was unacceptably boring. Nothing happened during it. If people want to go ahead and test my word on it, go play and tell me if something happens, because it's just a game of walking and no real interaction.
Carrick's rant on the medium, top 10 Carrick rants of all time, I think, on the show. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can't wrap my head around why they selected Bloober team here. I got to be honest, because I know that's been the rumor for a while, and they indicated as much that Bloober team was entering a partnership with Konami. So the writing was on the wall, but now seeing that it's official, to me, all of these other side projects, like they're going in on Silent Hill, and all of them, in my eyes, live and die by the success of Silent Hill 2 Remake. I feel if that does really well, which has the chance to, then it's going to lift Ascension, it's going to lift F, it's going to lift Townfall, and that'll be cool to see. But I think if they do what they've done in the past and really miss the mark and deliver something kind of boring, that lacks direction, then it will sink the entire franchise. Maybe not kill it, but I'm saying it will definitely make the rest of these properties feel not as valuable to fans, outside of maybe Silent Hill F, from my perspective. I think people will still give them a try because they're happy to see the series back. But I think there's a lot riding on Bloober team here. The only encouraging thing I can throw out there is you can tell by their work, especially now as I just played Silent Hill 2, that they are pretty inspired by what Konami did back then. The issue is they never carried forward any of those elements outside of the soundtrack composer, Akira Yamaoka. He is back for Silent Hill 2 Remake, but he worked on the soundtrack for the medium. And that was probably like one of the best parts of the game. Otherwise, though, I don't see a lot of the true inspiration in their work. Like you can't tell that they're fans specifically of Silent Hill 2. You can just tell they like horror games. So maybe they'll fit like a glove here because it's what they've always wanted. But for a team that, in my eyes, I'm not trying to beat them over the head here, but has consistently underachieved, this is a pretty big reward and a pretty big moment for them. So I hope that they succeed. I really do, especially after playing Silent Hill 2. I think it's fantastic. So I hope they get it right, because there's some things beyond just the tank controls that I go and think, yeah, like I would love to explore Silent Hill and get in some of the buildings more. That'd be really cool. So there's room to grow this, but I just think there's a lot riding here on Bloober team. And again, it's exclusive, so that'll be a interesting talking point moving down the show. Otherwise, though, let's move on to Halo Infinite. Winter update overview dropped. 4-player campaign co-op with the locals still canceled, by the way. Still canceled. Collectibles, they're saved per player, as well as a new XP system being added in for multiplayer, which is separate from the game's Battle Pass progression. So you'll get your match XP, your bonus XP for wins and performance, that type of stuff. You're also going to have 2 new arena maps, Argyle and Detachment, which were built from Forge, as well as 1 new mode, which is called a one flag mode. It's a asymmetrical multiplayer mode, and a 30-tier battle pass, as well as Forge's beta. All of this arrives November 8th. We had read about it, but I think with 343, sometimes it's hard to believe the release date, believe the release window, especially with recent delays and cancellations. So this looks to be locked in. They're saying this is what is arriving. Ben, does any of this call your name? Do you feel like you're going to venture back to the Zeta Halo ring?
This would be a fantastic winter update if it wasn't all we had in almost a year. So, I mean, this is, new XP systems that are separate from Battle Pass, because the Battle Pass, even though they've made some tweaks, still isn't what it needs to be for Halo Infinite. 2 new maps would be great if it was like quarterly releases, but it's been too long. So I'm encouraged. Hopefully this brings some people back in, creates that little bit of a zeitgeist again with Halo Infinite. But I'll jump back in because I love Halo, and I will always jump back into Halo when there's new content. But I don't know. It's like it's too little, too late to me for it really to. They've got to do something like substantial that makes a splash. And the fact that they're even like telegraphing it by calling it a winter update when there's not been anything before this to speak of, it's just disappointing. So November 8th is nice to see that it's coming out pretty soon. That means I'm going to have a couple days with it before a couple other big releases come out, and I check them out. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I'm when I was watching the overview, I was thinking to myself, it's not that I forgot, but I was like, I do really like this game. I do like Halo Infinite a lot when there's content coming, because the framework is great. But I'm in agreement with you largely that it's going to take something big to pull in a larger player base. I think this is a good starting point, though, looking at the list of things they're adding to the game. This is probably a good starting point for that aimed turnaround. This won't be the turning point, right? I think what you're alluding to will be that turning point of like, here's the big content drop, as Cog would call it, the Taken King moment. I think they're still waiting for that moment, but this should be the beginning of the comeback. Where you can start to sell people on the game again and say, look, it's got the Halo staples. It's got Forge. It has campaign co-op. It's got the proper progression system. We have the stupid monetization stuff ironed out. Content should continue to flow in thanks to the community through the Forge. Playlists have been organized a little better. I think, again, this isn't going to be anything that sells people now because this was expected, right? This is what we wanted at launch.
Right.
But I think down the line, when we start to look at a complete package with more additions, having this stuff here is going to be vital. So I'm excited for them. I'm rooting for them here. It does look great. I just, this is coming out around Frontiers time. I don't think I got time for that. Just saying.
It is fascinating to me. The new maps we're seeing are built within Forge, and it's almost like if Forge had been there, we could have had a lot of other new maps all along.
Oh, yes.
But that's just one guy's opinion. I don't know.
Yeah. So anyway, we have much more to comb through here. Xbox, their mobile app, they're adding the ability to edit, trim, and share your Xbox clips. I thought this is important because Xbox overall is updating their DVR system, something that fans have been complaining about for a long, long, long time. Xbox is finally getting on this. You may recall Cox talked about this a lot when he's spoken with Jason Ronald in the past, saying that they've put the DVR on the list as one of their main objectives. So it looks like they're finally answering the bell on that. For me, I used to use the PS4 share button pretty liberally, but since I'm like reviewing games a lot, I just don't use the share content often anymore. But I love that it's here. I love Xbox is finally addressing this.
Yeah, it's definitely important for them. And I know that a lot of people use it. And there are plenty of content creators that exclusively pull from Xbox. I don't think I've ever had a time on any console where I've used the share button or the equivalent, whether it's PlayStation or Xbox. It's just not like if I'm going to share something, it's going to be from PC where it's already capturing and stuff. Sure. But there's no denying that like there's a large base of people who will get a lot of use out of this.
Absolutely. So keep your eye out on that as the updates are rolling in. Next up, news in the world of Ubisoft, a game that I never thought would get off the ground. Looks to be struggling here. Splinter Cell Remake. Their director is leaving Ubisoft after 11 years with the company, working on games such as Assassin's Creed Unity and Far Cry 5. This was announced on his personal LinkedIn profile, where it seems like things were amicable, writing, quote, "After more than 11 years at Ubisoft, it's now time for me to go on a new adventure. 11 years is a long time, and summing it up in one post is quasi impossible. But I must say, I've been lucky to work with so many great people over the years, made so many friends. I want to say a heartfelt thank you to everyone I worked with at Ubisoft and say, au revoir. This is not adieu, for ours is a small industry. So I'm looking forward to our paths crossing again in the future. As for what's the next adventure, stay tuned," end quote. So, Ben, what's the read on the sitch here? You got a little exit. It doesn't look like it was a negative one. It looks like someone looking for a new adventure, but it comes at a time where this is a project many have been asking for, something in the Splinter Cell world to be activated, to be greenlit. It is a very new project. So how do you feel that already the game's lost its director?
Yeah, when a writer or a designer of certain pieces or a sound designer or something like that leaves fairly early on, it's like, okay, well, maybe their work was already done. But when a director leaves, the director's there from start to finish. And that's concerning for sure. I don't have any real reason to believe that this is a negative thing. It doesn't seem to be. But I don't know, when you agree to direct a game, it just seems to me like you're probably in it for the long haul. And that's a little concerning. They let him give his own goodbye. He had nothing positive words to say. Nobody made any weird statements like, we've already got a replacement for, whatever. But it's always concerning. So Splinter Cell is a property that you definitely can't mishandle, I feel like.
I agree.
So hopefully they get somebody in there who can do the job correctly. And for all we know, that Assassin's Creed Unity and Far Cry 5, okay, your credentials there are okay, but hopefully it's all right. But it is concerning for sure, for the timing of when he left.
Yeah, I mean, this was announced December 15th, 2021, this Splinter Cell remake. So we're talking very early, where you're still deciding on the direction of things. That is a pretty big void to fill.
Had they started work on it prior to the announcement? Do you know?
They didn't say.
Okay.
Didn't say, but they said starting development. So I would imagine that this would say that they have not been working on it up until this point. So it was greenlit. I mean, those early stages are so vital to have the heads there be consistent. Even I think the director can make an exit. When I think of, funny enough, this is a Ubisoft story, when Ashraf Ishmael had to leave, and I think Assassin's Creed Valhalla was going to come out. That was about 5 months, I want to say, ahead of the game's release. Yeah. And at that point, the direction solidified. You're just fine-tuning stuff.
It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, right. So this, to me, is at a vital point. You're talking less than a year where probably you're undergoing design, testing, feeling things out. I would say that's a concerning sign, personally, for the game. And if there's going to be any directional shifts, because now it's sort of in limbo. Are we going one way or another? Because there's still so much left undecided. But best wishes to the Splinter Cell director and their newest adventure. Next up in news that's not really news because it's not too surprising, G4 TV shutting down less than a year after returning. For our listeners over on the YouTube channel, on free feeds, you can see mine and Colin's episode called The Dire State of Games Media, where we sit down before all of this to talk about what's going on at G4, what's going on with Fanbyte, what's going on with all these outlets, and how they're looking to the future. And this was something that we talked about pretty extensively. So it's a very educational talk on where the games media is at, if anyone wants to listen to that. But Ben, G4 TV has closed its doors less than a year after returning. I've said a lot on this, so I'll try to keep mine concise, but I want you to go first.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard most of what you've said, at least here on Duke, about the subject. And obviously, everybody's talking about it. Clearly, feel for the people who are losing their jobs. You never want that to happen. But I don't know, writing's on the wall. G4, I thought it was weird when it came back. I thought that it wouldn't last very long. And frankly, I think they probably did a lot more in the time they were around, that they were back. than I expected. One thing I can say, though, is nobody else should try to revive this name. Even if you want to do the exact same thing, leave the name alone from this point. Like, just let it die. It's okay.
Yeah.
Things can go away, and we can appreciate them more because they're further in our mind. Now, my memory of G4 is not going to be my high school and college years hanging out with my buddies watching G4. It's going to be, this train wreck that just happened. So, again, I feel bad for the people who lose their jobs and for people who are banking on this, for their career, but there's not a whole lot more to say that would be surprising, in my opinion.
Yeah, completely agree. Of course, we feel bad for those who are genuine people who thought they got their dream job. Many people grew up watching G4 TV, so to work in that network was probably a really cool moment for folks. So I do feel for them.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, this is where we're heading as an industry. This is these types of things you can't muscle your way to an audience through ego, through big names. You've got to earn it, and this is something I think may have been able to work. Funny enough, if they just started small, but they started with a 200-person staff and did not steadily scale up. They started off with a whole operation and just totally believed that this was going to work. So to me, that was the most stunning part of it all, because maybe it had a chance, but unfortunately did not. To me, I feel for a lot of folks going in there. I mean, a lot of them are in the industry for a long time, whether we like them or not. It's a completely different story, where they probably knew this wasn't geared to last. And this looks like just a good cash op. Looks good on the resume. Yeah, I worked at G4, want to hire me. I have hosting experience, et cetera, et cetera. I think everyone understood quietly what this was.
Yeah. I hope so. I mean, like, there'd be nothing worse than thinking this was going to be the next 10 years of your life, and not.
Yeah, that's my naive side of me showing up, by the way. Just the belief that people knew this isn't going to last. Just, quietly get your money and then move on.
Right.
Riot Games. They've been acquired by Wargaming Sydney, the World of Tank developer, and now they're being called Riot Sydney. So this is did I say Riot Games has been acquired? You
said Riot had been acquired.
Oh my gosh. No. Okay, I misread my doc here. Riot Games has acquired Wargaming Sydney, the developer of World of Tanks, and they are now calling Wargaming Sydney Riot Sydney. Sorry, I read a lie.
Gigantic.
That would be gigantic if the World of Tanks developer got Riot Games, but in fact, it's the opposite here. So Riot Games, developer of Valorant, League of Legends, so on and so forth, has made a little bit of a splash here in the world of acquisitions. Cog missing out on this one. Any thoughts on this? I don't know if you've played World of Tanks at all.
I haven't played World of Tanks. No, I'm curious what Riot's going to do with them.
Same.
They know Riot knows what they're doing. They're no dummies, so they've clearly got a plan.
Yeah, I imagine this will convert into support. I don't know though. Yeah. Maybe World of Tanks is more popular than I gave it credit for, because I looked into it. It didn't look like it was popping, but like I tend to be surprised by these types of things. Like maybe there's a huge boasting World of Tanks community out there that's going to flood our comments and give me a lot of shit for what I had to say there.
Well, just real quickly, Colin mentioned recently, maybe the show isn't even out yet. I don't know, I might have already edited it, but mentioned recently, he plays some chess, and that he plays on like chess.com. And he's like, yeah, there's like 50,000 concurrent people playing on chess. And I was like, I know chess is huge, but holy shit. Like, so yeah, I mean, maybe a lot of people are playing World of Tanks.
I have friends who grind chess too. They're like, they're big on competing with each other. And it's like a really top streamed game. It's crazy.
Yeah.
The OG game, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Overwatch 2. This is kind of teased by Jez last week that he had an idea of the player count and that free to play was probably the right call for Blizzard. Now we have a number. It is 25 million players in just 10 days at the time of this news. Quite a few, but smell that? Smelling a little Halo Infinite energy on this one. Look, I mean, we saw the same thing, right? It was 20 million players very quickly for Halo Infinite, and it dropped off fast because the support wasn't there. So Blizzard, I'm hoping, can be different, because Overwatch 2 is fun. It's fun. I think it's a bad sequel, but it's a fun product. So I am pulling for them. I'm hoping that they really do deliver with some post-launch content. But how are you feeling about the player count here? Are you getting that Halo Infinite stink, or is that just me?
I don't know, because frankly, I didn't follow the Overwatch numbers for the first game, or part one of the game. But 25 million is a lot of success if they stick around. I have a feeling that maybe a third of those people never got past the queue screen. Where they just logged in, and so they counted them.
They counted them.
Yeah. But I mean, that's great. That's good. If you can retain a third of that for a while, that'd be awesome. But I don't know. I mean, the game, they didn't do anything new. Didn't do much new. Don't want to get any haters,
I think it's almost fair to say anything because it's pretty marginal, but I appreciate the concise.
They made a lot of decisions that no one who was still playing Overwatch 1 liked. So they did some stuff that was new, but was it good or not? I don't know. Yeah. But 10 days though, that's pretty quick. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'd love to see Overwatch skyrocket to the top again. My 2016 game of the year without hesitation. So I want to see them return to their former glory. And when I do fire it up, I mean, it is a damn good time. It's just, I think it's about that support now, which they didn't give Overwatch 1 much of in the end of its life. So
yeah, for the first few years, they were awesome. But after that, just... Yeah,
2016 and 2018 was just some of the best multiplayer, man. It's just so good. So I'm hoping they get to that point again because what's there is very fun.
Yeah.
Next up, Razer Edge. Got some write-ins about this one. It's being marketed as a tablet focused on Android games with the ability to cloud stream PC and Xbox games. This is the first device to use Qualcomm's Snapdragon G3X Gen 1 processor. The controllers for the Razer Edge are not permanently attached and function a bit as a clamp-on using the key sheet. Retails for $399 when it drops in 2023, featuring Wi-Fi and LTE versions, so a little bit of Vita energy there. Currently, the LTE version does not have a price tag. Nation Harris writes in, "Hey Dukes, with the news of Razer announcing or releasing a Android device for cloud gaming, as well as the release of the Logitech G Cloud, do the Dukes think there is a legitimate need or place for such devices? Whilst they can seem great in principle, what do they really offer that can't be achieved on any modern Android phone? Personally, I use xCloud almost daily on my lunch break at work. I have a good 5G signal and a nice phone controller, and it works great with very little lag too. This isn't to knock such products as we progress ever into the future. I imagine there comes a point where most games, if not all cloud-based, for much more than the Razer product, you buy a Series S and a screen for the little man." I think some of that sentence got janked up a bit. But anyway, genuinely curious on your guys' thoughts. The Stadia is going to die, so now you can't play Destiny 2 on the toilet at work anymore kind of day. Oh, that's a savage move right there.
That is pretty savage. Yeah.
I like it though. So what we have here, Ben, is a new handheld device again, this time in the form of the Razer Edge. We're being asked if there's really a necessity for these cloud devices when the phones can accomplish that. So I've spoken a lot about how I personally like the separation of devices because I don't want to, even if it's cloud stuff, I don't like to drain my phone battery by playing games when I'm going to need that for communication. So I like to have them separate and have my own dedicated gaming handheld device. Do you think that's what these companies are identifying, that there may be a need for a separate product? Do you think it's to call eyes more to just the cloud gaming initiative and say, this is a thing and it is important so much so that we built a product for it? Where do you stand on the whole situation?
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you. Now, in fairness, I'm not much of a cloud gaming person and I'm not much of a phone gaming person. Maybe part of that's the stigma from the days when you could only play Candy Crush on your phone. I don't know. But I think that these devices are important. And every time a new one comes out, I'm like, maybe I'll check that out. For me, my lifestyle just doesn't, I work from home. I don't have a lot of need for that kind of thing. Yeah, we're in the same boat there.
Yeah.
But I think that there are a lot of people who are not in that boat and who want something. Now, with that said, I think native is always going to be better. I don't think anybody would disagree that native is better. And maybe I'm just in a bad area, but I just can't get cloud to work well enough for my OCD about frame rates and responsiveness and everything like that. But to answer Nation's question, yeah, there's a legitimate need. And I think what we're seeing is all of these companies identifying, oh, okay, Xbox cloud gaming is huge. We should support it because this is the next wave. Like, when the first wireless controllers came out, I remember seeing 7 million adapters to be able to charge your controller in a different way. And I feel like that's this, except for with cloud gaming. So I definitely think people want something that's not their phone. I certainly don't want my phone. I don't like having notifications pop down every now and then. I know you can turn them off, but that kind of defeats the purpose of me having a phone. So I don't know. I think there's a need for it. I just don't know if, well, again, it's just not for me. So it's hard for me to see the use case for it in a mass. Yeah.
I think if you can nail the LTE version, you might have a sound argument. To me, that's the one that I look at and go, oh, well, you know, that's where things get a little spotty. And obviously that goes out of the device's hands and more into a service provider's hands, which is always, you never know what you're going to get. But for me personally, like that would be the difference maker. Like if we could really get the Wi-Fi stuff, to me sounds unappealing, much like you said. I'm already home. And if I'm at home, I don't really want to mess around with cloud gaming because I can likely play that natively. There are times where cloud gaming was appealing. For example, when there isn't a handheld option and I wanted to continue my Like a Dragon playthrough, I grabbed the Steam Deck and I played it in bed because I didn't want to be at my work computer. So that separation is important to me. So that works out in my favor. But otherwise, I am experiencing the same almost, if you will, zeitgeist that you are, where as I see more and more, I feel open to it. I'm all right. Let's see what this is about. I will just throw out there that to me, the Razer Edge sounds less appealing than the Logitech G Cloud. I should make it clear though that I am planning a sponsored video with Logitech, so that it doesn't really factor into my conversation at all here. But I do want to make sure it's clear to the audience, just in case they think I'm swaying one way or the other. But to me, when we're talking $400 for Android games, I don't know, man. Phone market games, I'm okay. Like that's just such a saturated, wasted market. But the cloud stuff, if you're going to do that, then a dedicated cloud device in its quality could be what Logitech delivers. But ultimately, the Steam Deck is still the default device, and I don't see anyone competing with it. It's just like, okay, you have your native games. They run well here. They play well here. It's a device that's supported like hell by the company that made it. And you have the cloud option. And it's not even official yet. So once they find out an official means to support it, that will be great. But otherwise, that's what I feel about currently where these devices are and the Razer Edge.
Yep.
Last little bit of news, and we'll talk about what games we are playing. Platinum Games, they talked about why their games are no longer on Xbox. And it's been an interesting week for them. We'll talk about them later. Quote, the reason is simply that we couldn't make it in time as we didn't have enough hands on deck. Basically, we were just too busy to include Xbox into our platform support. That's pretty much it. Personally, Xbox is a very important hardware platform moving forward, and we definitely want to keep Xbox in our sights moving forward for our titles. We want to release our titles on as many platforms as possible moving forward, so we definitely have Xbox in mind, end quote. I swear that is not me mistyping. That's them saying the same thing like 3 different ways in a paragraph. So Ben, thoughts on Platinum Games saying that Xbox is important moving forward, but they just didn't have the support?
I don't understand it when games by AAA or AA developers don't come out on all platforms. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that a game like Platinum puts out is going to be much larger and much more in depth than a game like Lilymo, who I work for, puts out. There's no comparison there. They're huge, and there's a lot more work that goes into them. But from my understanding of people I've talked to in the industry and just things I've read, like when you have a game in a development console or a development software, to port it to the different platforms is not always that difficult. Sometimes trying to port it to different generations is obviously much more difficult. But if you're pretty much looking at similar specs, I don't get it. And then the actual publishing process is a pain in the ass, but it's the same for every game. I mean, if you have online connectivity, there's definitely going to be a little bit more there that you have to work with and to get through, especially with Xbox. I know that theirs is a little bit more rigid, although I haven't personally dealt with that. But somebody like Platinum, I don't understand why you couldn't hire a couple extra people to sell another tens of thousands of copies. So I don't get it. I certainly don't understand why they decided to talk about it this way, because like you said, they said the same thing 3 different ways, which and we're all guilty of sometimes, right? But not in an official press release.
I mean, have they ever listened to an LSM podcast?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the same thing. But no, I just don't understand. And yeah, Xbox is an important hardware platform. Maybe they haven't seen success on Xbox. They haven't seen it in other companies and stuff where they wanted to, but I just don't understand I don't want to say excuse of we're too busy.
Yeah.
Because it's not like you're developing an entirely new game.
Yeah, and it's hard to
imagine. By the way, Xbox is the easiest to publish to, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
From
you have all that insight.
My very, small scale opinion, it's the easiest to publish to.
Yeah, but that's still important. Certainly,
Sure.
I have yet to publish a game yet, but that definitely is important insight to consider. And it's funny because Platinum Games being the subject here, and we've seen their steady decline. I don't want that to happen. I always say that when Platinum's on their A game, like they're developing the best action games in our industry. When you look at Nier, when you look at Astral Chain, like they are the top dog when they're on their game, but they've just really lost their way. I think they've been pushed into some projects they probably shouldn't have made, like Babylon's Fall. Obviously, this Bayonetta 3 situation's gotten really messy for them. It hasn't been good PR, despite some of it now swaying in their favor at the time of recording this. So, we'll get into all of that. But when it comes to Xbox support, yeah, I really wonder if they're not saying the truth, which is that it's probably easier to focus your team on just one platform and know what you're working with instead of considering other things. Again, the specs, the hardware are similar, but I just wonder if there's more money in that and saying we went one route with PlayStation and PC and we made Babylon's Fall because that was less of a risk since there was more money invested in us than going multi-plat, betting on ourselves more with just a standard publishing deal and seeing how it fared that way. Perhaps that's it. I feel like this is why the industry fails to grow sometimes, because we're not really getting the direct answers that I think are there. I don't like the feeling of reading something and going, that's probably half true. Like, yeah, you didn't have enough hands on deck. Okay, sure. But like, you guys have made this big initiative with the Wonderful 101 to do self-publishing. So you're big enough to try to self-publish and really like swing your what's around. But then when it comes to porting to Xbox, we just don't have hands on deck and we play the victim. Something's missing in the middle of that story there. And especially when you say moving forward, it's more important than ever. It's like, yeah, probably because you're desperate. You probably didn't feel desperate beforehand, so you didn't need to deliver there. And you were happy taking the PlayStation bag perhaps, or the Nintendo bag in certain cases. And I think that's how they would function best, is to just work individually with these platform holders, because it seems like that's where their best work comes from.
And I would respect them more if they would just say that. Like, yeah, we make more money on PlayStation, so it's almost not worth it for us to put on Xbox. I don't know if that's true, but if that was true, I would respect them more for saying that than saying something like this. The other thing is, let's not forget that a little while back, Platinum was talking about, we hope somebody buys us. And I don't know, maybe this is another like, well, we want to let Xbox know we're interested in their platform because maybe they'll buy us. Or I'm not much of a speculator kind of guy, but maybe there is something happening in the works where they might get picked up and they want to go ahead and prime people that just because we haven't been on Xbox a whole lot doesn't mean we'll never be there. So I don't know. It's a weird statement to make.
Yeah, but it's good to get some type of answer here. And I'm sure as we get clear of Bayonetta 3, we'll have a better idea of where Platinum Games goes down the line. But for now, we pause the news. We talk about what games we're playing, and we get into some warm-up questions. So, Ben, you got an interesting list here. Let's see what you've been playing, my friend.
Well, I'll start off by talking about Overwatch 2 just a little bit, because we've already talked about it some, and you guys have talked about it extensively. I've been playing a lot of Overwatch 2, and I played a fair amount of Overwatch. I've probably, I played a fair amount of Overwatch probably between like 2017, 2019, early 2019. And then I just put it down, maybe popped in once or twice here and there when somebody's wanted to play. And I think it's just the hype right now with Overwatch 2 that's got me going back to it. And I'm playing on PC now as opposed to playing on console before. So that definitely adds a different dynamic to it. Puts you in different lobbies too, especially for competitive, but it adds a different dynamic as far as using mouse and keyboard over a controller for me. Not to say it's better or worse, just it's different. And so I'm just having a lot of fun. Like, when Overwatch is good, it's really good. And when Overwatch is bad, it's really bad. I mean, playing with randoms is always rough, of course, but playing with a team, there's nothing better than that.
Yes.
So I don't know. I'm having a lot of fun with Overwatch 2. I've only been able to play maybe a dozen games with a full team. A lot of games with like four people. But
is that because of queue times, or is that because of finding a full squad?
Sorry, I meant like as far as like a whole team of people that I know.
Yeah, because like when I full queued, the whole wait system is at least 5-10 minutes long. Like the queue when you're
full queuing,
yeah, it takes longer.
I'm having the opposite experience.
Interesting.
Yeah.
See, for us, it's like tops 2 minutes when it's just 2-3 of us. But when we start to queue up more and more people, it just takes forever to find that last slot.
But what are you queuing as?
I queue as any. We all queue as any, just so like anyone can slot in anywhere they want to play.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting to me. Yeah, and I wonder if it's because I usually, if I'm playing competitive, I don't usually slot as any. If I'm playing, I usually slot as tank or damage. If I'm playing, what's it called, free play, whatever, quick play, I usually slot as any, and I'm having really good success getting in like really quickly with a larger squad. So I don't know. I've never, other than the first day or two, never really had any problems with the queue times too much. I mean, there's been a couple times here and there at 2 a.m. where it's like, oh, it's been 9 minutes. Holy crap. But other than that, it's fine. Also been playing a little bit of Vampire Survivors, which we'll talk about later for a different segment. And then the last thing I've been playing is Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed.
Let's hear about this one. I'm curious.
So this is not a game I was necessarily interested in. But Ilphonic reached out to me for my other podcast and streaming, or I don't know, they got my contact info somehow and asked if we wanted codes. And I said, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. So I'm obligated to let you know, based on their request, that I did receive codes from Ilphonic. With that said, Ghostbusters is basically, it's an asymmetric game. It's 4v1 essentially. 4 people playing the Busters, 1 person playing as the ghost. Of course, you can queue up with randoms or with bots, I think. I played it pre-release, and I haven't been able to play it since release, so I don't 100% know how that queue system works, but I will tell you that we had a full squad, so it wasn't that big of a concern. It is cross-play. It does, once you get everybody connected to each other, it works seamlessly. Graphics are great. The atmosphere is really cute. There's a little bit of performance issues if you've got max settings, but if you bump it down a tad, it runs buttery smooth, at least for me. I had a lot of fun playing this game. Basically, as the Ghostbusters, you're going into a place, you're trying to capture all the ghosts. As the ghost, you're going in, trying to haunt the place. And basically, it's a competition of will of who's going to do the thing faster. And I was playing with 4 other buddies. We had a great time because we were making a lot of jokes and goofing around and freaking out. And we were all on the same mic or in the same Discord call too. So like, it wasn't, we all could hear each other freaking out whenever something weird happened and everything. So that was what made it really fun. If you're somebody who doesn't have a full group of people to play with, if you're going to be playing with randoms, if you're not going to be mic'd up, it's hard for me to really say how exciting of a game this is going to be for you, because I just don't know that everything's there. You know, as far as these asymmetric multiplayer games go, like, it's fairly standard fare. The issue is that they don't have a lot of modes. There's one mode, at least when I played it last week, there was only one mode. And so with that said, I'm not sure what kind of legs this game has. There is a rank up system. You can upgrade your gear, all that kind of stuff. So like, there's that little bit of progression that you get, a little bit of dopamine hit every time you see that you've got a new accessory to unlock, or you can change your outfit, or your ghost trapper your trap is now a little bit better. But I'm just I think it's a cool concept. Any of these games with big IPs attached to them, of course, are going to do better than a game that comes out that's the exact same but without the IP attached to it. So there could be some legs there. But as far as longevity for the game, unless they do some big updates and add in some different modes and stuff, I would be a little bit concerned for it. So it's, like I said, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of dirty jokes to be made about all the stuff the ghosts put out. All that raunchiness is there for you. Nice. I mean, the game doesn't make those jokes. We made those jokes, but man. Yeah. Maybe they do later on. I don't know, but But like I said, it's a fun game for a couple nights. It is a $40 game, so if you got some friends who want to pick it up, like, I don't know, I'll say no to a $70 game if it's not something I'm super interested in. But if I got two other friends who want to play a $40 game, I'll buy it and play it for 6 hours and feel like I got my money's worth.
Wow.
So I'm a little bit, I mean, not all the time, don't get me wrong, but I have to be at least a little interested in it. But that's definitely going to be a judgment call on everybody else's part, for sure.
Right on. Well, busy, interesting, diverse week for you.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
I think the same could be said for me. I cranked out 4 reviews. And I'm finally able to talk about everything. Last week, I know some people like probably raised an eyebrow when I said I can't talk about what I'm playing because all of it was embargoed at a perfect time where I couldn't talk about it during the show. So now I can because the curtain has been raised. First one I did, Scorn, 6-hour horror game with puzzle elements, very rich atmosphere. Scorn is oh man. I wanted to really love this game. It's not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. It's for a very particular gamer, but it's not bad. My experience, though, as I showed in my video review, it was a pretty broken game. It's broken in both design, like just by systemic nature, but it's also technically broken in some respects. So what I mean by that is in Scorn, its save system is one of the worst things I've seen. Just because what'll happen is it does not have a regular autosave every X minutes or checkpoints, triggers within the engine that say like, okay, save here when they cross through this doorway or whatever. That's not set up. And you can't manually save your game at all. So if you watch my video review, people will see I had pretty regular saves. Like one was 4 minutes in, 15 minutes in. It's like, okay, that's fine. Then it hops.
So you were manually doing that? Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's fine. That was the game's autosave. You cannot manually save in this game.
But you said it doesn't have like autosaves that make sense either.
No, it doesn't. That's the thing. You don't know how to trigger them. It's not like, I finished a part of a puzzle, save. Like you think that's how it feels like it. It really, I wouldn't even say when it feels like it. It has set triggers. It's just very far apart. And I think it's because there's no threats in the game.
Okay.
So it feels like it can do that, which I get. Yeah. But the problem is that it's a puzzle game. If you get stuck and go like, I want to cool off or go do something else, you can't just shut it off and save it and just call it a day. Yeah. So as I looked at my play clock, those gaps in my saves got wider and wider. They went from 14 minutes to 55. That's still a lot, but maybe if you lost progress, doable. Then it went from 55 to like an hour 22. Again, that's a doable range. Then it went from an hour 22 to 2 hours and like 40 something minutes. Okay, now we're talking an hour gap if I were to lose progress. Then was the most unfortunate part. The biggest gap is where I hit a game-breaking bug where I fell to the floor and I would have had to replay 2 hours of the game to get back to where I was.
Man.
And we're talking about a puzzle game. It's not like a fun action game. We're talking about your typical one and done game, a game with 12 achievements. It gives you an achievement for every single chapter you complete, and there's 12 of them. So it's an easy 1,000 gamer score. It's like one of those one-time experience games. It's not a game you go and replay and say, I loved it anyway. No, at least in my opinion, it's not. But what it does is it gets so much right, and it's why I like hated to sit down in my review and say, like, this really tested my patience. Like I couldn't finish it because the game didn't let me, and I would have had to replay. It's a 6-hour game, so almost half of it I would have had to spend getting back to where I once was, and hoping, by the way, that bug didn't occur again. Because I tried one other time. I had an input bug where the controller wasn't working, but the keyboard was working. And I didn't know that was the case. So I get there, the puzzle can't be solved. My progress stops. So I go, okay, let me reload. I replay 40 minutes of the game, get there, and it still doesn't work. So in a bit of frustration, I just like not slap my keyboard. I'm like, let me see if just like D works. And I start like mashing it aggressively, and it did work. I was like, oh shit, okay, cool. I'm glad to see that. Okay, so it's an input bug. That type of stuff sucks, but at least you can deal with it. Yeah. But otherwise, I don't want to slander this game because I don't want to push the audience away from it. If they were to patch this and put the proper save system in, I think it's an easy recommendation because you don't get a lot of games like Scorn. And I like that Xbox took a chance on this one. And I did narratively, world-wise, like take a larger interest in this and something like The Medium, which was on Xbox exclusively. Like Scorn is a gross game in a really dark, depressing world. And I was definitely left curious the whole time through. And you start to recognize as you go through all these puzzles, the true attention to detail that Ebb Software put into this game. Again, very environmentally rich, lots of little clues throughout. The game never holds your hand, never tells you how to do anything. And that may lead to a bit of aimless wandering as you just try to figure out what's the puzzle you do next. That can be frustrating. And that's why I say it is for a very specific type of gamer. But the fact that I don't like these types of games and I was very interested in Scorn, I can't sit here and go hard pass. But keep an eye out on patches. And for the love of God, even if they patch it, keep an eye out on that save system, because that will be the thing that screws you over. Because they try to inject combat in the game. This is avoid at all costs. Like, if you can skip combat sections and run by enemies, do so. It does not feel good. And I think this is where Ebb Software kind of tried to bend to what they think the casual gamer will expect. Because I remember when Scorn was first revealed, people thought, oh, this is going to be
10 years ago, it feels like.
Yeah, right. And they were thinking, oh, it's going to be a Doom-like game. That's what a lot of people thought. It's anything but Doom. So I think they tried to add combat to meet those expectations, but it didn't even have to feel slick and smooth like Doom. It just had to not feel so rugged and like you were just crawling through some sludge. It's like the definite part of the game that is, I think, bad. But otherwise, Scorn is a game I could recommend to people, just not right now. Maybe
have
check
you considered that you're just bad at puzzle games? Is that a possibility?
Yes, okay. I did consider that because, I could get frustrated at these games, but I was proud of myself because I stuck with it and I did solve a lot of things. And when I got in my rhythm, I hit that bug and I went, fuck this. I'm out.
Yeah.
I did a preview as well for Warhammer 40k Darktide. This is a day one Game Pass game. It's coming out on PC first on November 30th. Warhammer 40k Darktide is pretty much a spiritual successor to Vermintide. I love the art direction for this game. It really called out to me. It reminded me a bit of Freedom Wars for my Vita fans out there. And it's pretty much like you're serving a prison sentence. You're going out, you're completing missions. There's 4 different classes. I played as this one almost mage class. I forgot the name of it, but you could crush people's heads with spells from afar. But since I was a glass cannon, I was susceptible to a lot of damage. So I had to dodge a lot and have the big tank friend of mine come on in and barrel over enemies. So there was a lot of cooperative elements here, but this one did not run well in my preview experience. It had looping loading screens, some crashes, which was not encouraging for the closed beta about a month away from launch. I think this is a really good game. Kind of same story with Scorn, so I apologize if it sounds tedious here. I'm repeating myself, but this is a game that I could recommend currently, but they need to put this in the can a little bit longer, I think, and really polish it up because it feels like it's going to be a good game. It's just they need to get it right. They need to clean it up. But otherwise, you're going to go through these horde-like missions, a la Left 4 Dead, kill a lot of enemies. There's going to be boss fights. There's a little bit of progression here. I think it's a $40 game. So there you go, Ben. There's that famous asking price of yours. So there's something here that you should keep an eye on, especially with Game Pass, much like Scorn. It's one I'm not going to push you away from and be like, don't do this at all.
Right.
But when we're talking money, that's where I'll say, hold up, this one might be a little dangerous. But keep an eye on Darktide for Game Pass for sure.
Is it better or worse than the last Warhammer 40k game that you checked out? I think it was about a year ago. Didn't another Warhammer game come out?
Oh, yes. Oh, my God. It was the one that was like Doom, right? Funny enough, we were just saying that with Scorn.
I didn't play it because you told me not to.
Yes. Hold on. I have it on my... Oh, my God.
It's not a big deal.
I'm trying to remember the name of it because it's going to bug me now. I can't think of it. But yeah, the Doom-like one. And that... I love the Warhammer world is what I've learned. But that game, I know a lot of people liked, but for me, at first it felt, oh, this could be almost AA Shadow Warrior style game.
Yeah.
And then it just fell off a cliff by like the 3-hour point. Whereas Warhammer 40k Darktide is like, okay, we have a proven formula with Vermintide 1 and 2 that works really well. So Darktide shouldn't be a miss in my eyes, but we'll see. I would say keep your eye on it. The next one I'm really excited to talk about. Bryce McCloskey writes in, Yo Dukes, I heard that Maddie has a new game of the year with the new Plague Tale. That game must be something special to overtake Elden Ring. Is Plague Tale Requiem as groundbreaking as Elden Ring was to you? Curious to hear your thoughts. Peace and love. Thank you, Bryce. Yeah, so this was the one that I reviewed first. I got this game like 2 weeks ahead of launch. I dove into it thinking, okay, I'm going to pace myself here. And I had 2 10-hour sessions and beat it. And oh my God, I couldn't put the controller down. Is it groundbreaking like Elden Ring? I don't think so. And Elden Ring, I love because he brought back, I don't even say Elden Ring in some respects wasn't groundbreaking to me because it just reminded me of how I felt when Skyrim came out. That's a really big compliment, by the way. But yeah, Elden Ring did something for a lot of people. So I'm not taking away from that by saying Plague Tale is my game of the year. Just to me, you don't get games like Plague Tale Requiem as much anymore, which is this finely directed experience that makes use of every ounce of time on its screen. Like it, in today's day and age of game design, developers hope you stay in their world for as long as humanly possible. And that makes sense because that's the natural thing you want to do. Hey, I've spent 4 to 5 years on this, or I'm planning to spend 4 to 5 years on this. I want you to invest every ounce of your being into what we've built here because we think it's really good.
Yeah.
I respect that A Plague Tale is a series that has built itself off of, here's this really good story, rich characters, engrossing dark world, rip-roaring gameplay with some neat stealth sections, and we want you here as little as possible. Like, not an in and out experience. A Plague Tale Requiem is 2 times the length of Innocence once I completed it, but it is, and that may lose something for a lot of folks, by the way. But for me, I felt like nothing was put there without purpose, because the biggest thing I can say about A Plague Tale Requiem is it didn't have any side content. It was just 20 hours of raw story. There was like once or twice I could go off the beaten path, explore, and the environments are much more open where you'll have some long-standing gameplay sequences, which I think is for the better. But it did remind me a lot of Naughty Dog's style of game design. Yeah. And I think that's a huge compliment. Naughty Dog's a world-class studio. To see Asobo go from, Microsoft Flight Simulator, not that's the only thing they did, but to do that and A Plague Tale Requiem, I know they're separate teams, but good God, man, it's impressive. And yeah, for me, it was the story, the atmosphere. I think A Plague Tale just delivers a really unique gameplay premise and saying, of course, not just the rats and how you can control them and manipulate your environment with light, but how sometimes the most stealthy experience is in the light. Like when you're in the light and the enemy is in the dark is when they are in the most danger. It's usually the opposite in stealth games, right? Like you're in the dark, you're safe. They're in the light. They're a victim to attack. Complete opposite here. Once you snuff out that light, the rats are on them. And since they've given more tools for Amicia, the main character, to use, she's more fun to play as. But yeah, this game's also a looker. Absolutely stunning video game. And I'm not a graphics guy. I'm an art style guy, but not a graphics guy. But for me, this game, I had to pause a couple of times and really take it in. And I think once more Xbox fans get in on A Plague Tale Requiem through Day One Game Pass, which I don't know how Xbox managed to pull this one off. Money. But through Day One Game Pass, yeah, a lot of money.
Yeah.
I think the Asobo acquisition talks are going to pick up a lot after the Activision merger's done. I think big time. And I just highly recommend people download it. Sorry, go on.
No, you're good. I just played Innocence a couple months ago, and my first time through it. I hadn't played it before.
Nice.
Hadn't even really been interested in it. I think I'd heard multiple people talk about it, and I knew this was coming soon. So I have it downloaded. I'm ready to go. I was going to play it today. I just didn't get a chance to. But I'm really excited for it.
You should be. It's a really special experience. It stuck with me. The way I describe it to my friends was it had that rare Maddie hand over the mouth moment where you're just, I'm not dramatic like that, although I think a lot of people like to believe I am.
Just your thumbnails,
for humor. Yes, just my thumbnails, typically for humor. But I actually uncontrollably was sitting there like, oh, no. Like I was talking to myself. Those little subtle things I pick up about myself is usually a sign that I really like something a lot.
Yeah,
and when it sticks with me afterwards, then I know I loved it. And I had that opportunity to really think about A Plague Tale in that way. And that was nice because I hope the review process is much like it's been recently, which is I had a lot of time with Scorn and I had a lot of time with A Plague Tale Requiem, and those same thing with the game I'm going to talk about next, the last game, where that is very uncommon, Ben, as I'm sure you're well aware as you've reviewed games. But just so I can stop rambling here, last game I want to run through is Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope. So I got a review for that. That's up on Retro Rebound. And dude, I love Mario and Rabbids in the first place. And I gotta say, I can't believe this is Ubisoft. I said this last time, but I can't believe it's them that's delivering this. And it's the same story as always. Like, I can't believe the series exists. It's Mario, it's Rabbids, 2 unlikely brands coming together. And it's Ubisoft developing it. And they made an XCOM style game. It's just none of that computes. And so Sparks of Hope just ramps all that up to 10 and it opens up the areas more. You get more side quests. And this is a moment where, unlike Plague Tale, I wanted more of that. Mario & Rabbids Kingdom Battle the first game felt like, okay, this is a game that is a proof of concept. Like, I love what's here, but this is a proof of concept. Sparks of Hope comes around. It's okay. Now we're really kicking the doors down. There's puzzles. There's fun coin collecting challenges. This is not only a great fun RPG, I think for young adults. I think people can get into it in our age group, but I think this is a great baby's first RPG. Like if you are a parent and you are looking to get your kid into RPGs, maybe you're like a big RPG fan, you want to introduce them to something, I just feel like today's day and age couldn't handle, like as I did, a Champion, KOTOR. You just can't do that to kids. Be like, here's this obtuse game as you're playing games on your iPad. No, it's Knights of the Old Republic. You got to get them in on something fluid, fun, whimsical, with depth. And I think that's what Mario & Rabbids is. It's very approachable. And Sparks of Hope to me is just, it's another fantastic game. I mean, October's delivered in some respects big time. And this one reviewed extremely well, I saw. So please do check that out as well. But anyway, those are all my reviews. Those are all my previews. It was a really busy week. I'm happy to be on the other end of it. But yeah, a lot of fun was had.
Nice, dude.
All right, time for some more questions. We're going to talk about Bayonetta 3 now because this is a big controversy.
Just lighten it up a little bit.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Let's bring some levity to the show, right? We're really Debbie Downing. All right, first some context, and then we'll get into the question. So lead Bayonetta voice actor Helena Taylor had posted a now viral video on Twitter claiming she was offered a rate of $4,000 for her to reprise the role as the game's lead. Hideki Kamiya responded indirectly by insinuating that she was not telling the truth, saying, quote, "Sad and deplorable about the attitude of untruth. That's all I can tell right now." By the way, this is me reading his tweet verbatim. "By the way, beware of my rules," end quote. I don't even know. Continuing on, though, what was said to be an untruth is that Platinum Games had initially claimed Helena not appearing in Bayonetta 3 was due to scheduling conflicts. However, now Jason Schreier of Bloomberg did additional digging, and VGC can corroborate that Helena was offered between $3,000 to $4,000. Here's the key component here: per session, for at least 5 recording sessions, totaling to approximately $20,000, according to 2 people familiar with the deal and documentation viewed by the outlet. It is then said that Taylor responded with a request for a 6-figure offer. Helena Taylor has since denied this, saying to Bloomberg that, quote, "This is an absolute lie," and, quote, "Platinum is trying to save their ass and the game," end quote. Separately, Stephen Totilo of Axios reported that recordings for Bayonetta historically have required 3 to 4 sessions per game. The SAG/AFTRA union minimum is $1,000 per session, and the union deal expires in 21 days. Now onto the question from John Lisa Jr. How do you guys feel about the Bayonetta 3 controversy? While I don't want to see anyone underpaid, she did turn down the union-approved rate, violated an NDA, and called for a boycott of the game. I think people who want to boycott the game surely can. However, it seems like this is being blown out of proportion. This isn't David Hayter and Metal Gear. This is a franchise with limited sales potential that Nintendo is subsidizing. What are your thoughts? Ben, we'll start with you.
There's a lot to unpack here, Maddie.
Yeah,
I don't know where to start.
Yes, there certainly is. You can start wherever you want, my friend.
So first of all, I mean, I don't think either of us, maybe you have a little more than I do because you've actually done some voice acting, but we don't really know the full scope of the industry as far as what people get on average to voice for these games. We don't really necessarily know how long these sessions were going to be. We don't know anything. So like maybe let's say even if it's true that they offered her $4,000 for 5 sessions, is $20,000 enough? I don't know. I've seen some people who seem to be in the know say that even $20,000 is pretty low. Mm-hmm. With that said, like we're literally dealing with a he said, she said situation here. Yes, we have evidence that she was offered more than she says she was offered. We also have her word, and unless she just thought she wouldn't get caught and is outright lying, for her to say that she was only offered $4,000, she must have at least had that understanding, if not actually been offered that. So I don't really know how to address it other than to say that it kind of sucks that it's just all out in the public for people just like the court of public opinion to weigh in on, because how many days, 2 days, 3 days before we saw anything other than her video saying that she was getting lowballed? And that's the story that the majority of people are going to have. They're never going to get the other side. And now people like usual normal thinking people are going to say, well, maybe she's telling the truth, but there's probably more to this. And then other people are going to immediately say, that's a lot of money, you should have taken it, you know, whatever. So like I don't understand why anybody would do this, even if it was true, because it's not going to get you any more work. It's not going to sway all of the public opinion towards you. And Bayonetta is a storied franchise that's still going to sell a lot of copies. So I don't know where to start. Obviously we can't say who's right and who's wrong here. But all I will say is beware of my rules, Maddie. So
yeah, right.
So I'm basically giving a non-answer, but what I'm saying is like, we don't have the information, the actual information to know what happened, other than to know that it was a mess, whatever happened.
Yeah, I do have some thoughts to offer because, as you mentioned, I have done voice work in the industry. There's a reason why I didn't pick it as a career route. And the reason I never got into boycotting this, because I just think that's silly, man. Like you mentioned, we don't have both sides of the story, and people are already calling for boycotts, trying to ratio Kamiya. And I'm not saying he's a great guy, but it's funny, by the way. I just want to throw this out there. It's funny, by the way. I always thought it was really weird how he talked about like people who spoke English, and people were like, oh, it's funny. And there was like viral videos about it saying like, oh, it's Hideki Kamiya blocking us because we're speaking English. Isn't that hilarious? I'm like, why are we encouraging this?
Right.
And now it's a bad thing.
Right.
Now it's a bad thing. I'm like, shouldn't we have already taken it seriously? But I digress.
Didn't he get booted off Twitter or something?
He did get booted off Twitter. Then he came back because he was blocking so many people that I guess Twitter suspended his account. So he's back now. And I do feel bad for Platinum in the sense that if this ends up being Helena Taylor lying, I will throw out there that this was probably the last PR shitstorm they needed ahead of an important game for them. Like you just had important. Babylon's Fall. It was a flop. You already announced that they're terminating the service for that before the game was even a year old. And it's going to be on the game's year anniversary. They shut the servers off. So like, yeah, this is a pretty significant release for them. Now, what I'll throw out there is I spoke out about the rate because it was $4,000 in total, which was said to be at first. Voice actors and actresses are historically paid extremely low prices. I know because I have been. And I'm not a big time VA. But what I have experienced is that this ties into my second point. A lot of these companies hire for, of course, talent, but they also hire for followings. Yeah. So I've had the privilege of interviewing dozens of voice actors in my career. And one thing that's always requested of me is, can I promote my Twitter? Can I promote my Instagram? Can I promote my overall social profile on your show? And I'm always like, yeah, go ahead. Like you're giving me your time. It's the least I can do. The reason for this, though, is because a lot of these companies will pick you because it makes it easier to market the game. Mm-hmm. It is a form of marketing to have the big time VA in your game saying, I'm here, I'm this character. People draw attachments to these VAs through their performances. And so they tend to look at least the games that they are featured in. It's why you're seeing, especially in JRPGs, a repeating cycle of the same voices because they're just pulling in the same audience constantly. So there is marketing to this that people don't think a lot about beyond the talent. But as for the pay side of things, it's very believable what Helena said and why so many people got. I'm not justifying the dogpiling, by the way, but it's very much believable what Helena said. And it sucks if she lied because there is a lot of truth to VAs being underpaid. I cannot say who, but I was offered on multiple accounts payment for exposure for VA jobs. Like, we'll just give you a leg to stand on in your career. Now, as someone who has a leg to stand on, I have a platform, I do have an income, this is not my livelihood, and I had a voice to offer, I was able to negotiate myself into a small chunk of change. But the reality is that most upstarting actors do not have that. And the industry does take full advantage of that. And they do lowball people and say, we're giving you your start. Use our game as the portfolio to present to the next company, and then you'll get your bag. So it wouldn't have surprised me by any stretch if Nintendo, Platinum, any developer in this industry offered VAs a low price tag, because it's historically been done.
Yeah.
I've experienced it, and I know how these people hire because I've interacted with tons of people who are, by the way, you can check out the interviews on my channel, like some of the most high profile actors and actresses in the industry. So this is very relevant. And if Helena, again, did lie, she's done tremendous damage to what is a very important conversation. We've seen it in the past pop up with Ashley Birch. She talked a lot about vocal tear that these actors and actresses go through and the low pay that they go through despite gaming growing. That's where the union does step in and fight for a standard rate here. And I think there are levels to this. Again, things that we don't know. If you are the face of your franchise, which Bayonetta is, I'm not going to sit here and act like Bayonetta is a number one selling Nintendo franchise like I saw the rest of the internet doing. But Bayonetta is an important franchise. It's certainly Platinum's most popular franchise, that's for sure. And if you are the face of that, you are giving personality to the most important character on the front of your box, you should be paid more than the average worker.
Right.
But I also know this is where the unfortunate reality comes in for Helena. You're going to get a lot of blue collar workers coming in, which a lot of people start living in their own bubble, saying, hey, I'd like to make 20K in 5 days. That would be fucking sick.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that's where, again, you could tell there was some emotionality in her message. She kind of called out Jennifer Hale, which blows my mind, by the way. Like, Jennifer Hale is the shit.
Right.
I mean, she is a generational talent, longtime vet in the voice acting community, like Bastila and KOTOR. We're talking 20 years ago. She delivered like an amazing performance there. Like, to say that you own a character is a big mistake. You can be the voice of a character, but you do not own that character.
Right.
And that was another issue. So you could tell there was some emotion there, but I feel for her, because my thought process now, given the current state of affairs, is she probably felt like she had nothing to lose. That's my read of the situation. She had nothing to lose, back up against the wall, go down fighting. Because if you look at her profile, she's hired in a lot of minor roles. And I think when you look at that and then you see the offer there, I talk about sponsors a lot on my YouTube channel because I think it's a good way to convey the idea of, like, that's basically a company telling you your value. When a company comes to you and says, you have 500,000 subs, we'd like to give you this wallet for $200. You're like, wow, you view me that low, huh? Yeah. There is a level of insult to that. Even if it's money, they think of you as that price tag and nothing more. And they either think you're stupid, they're trying to get over on you, or again, they think you're that worthless. And the same thing applies here to voice acting rates. She probably saw that after getting all these minor roles. And she said in the video, like, I've been in school for 7 years. I've done X, Y, and Z. She probably saw it, and there's a bruised ego there. Like, I'm worth more than this. And I'm all for the VA getting the bag. But that's my general thought process on it all, as someone who's worked on that side of the industry a bit. It's a really sad state of affairs here, and it's pretty messy. So I hope it gets ironed out. And certainly by next show, we'll have more details.
The weird thing that I'll say to end on is that SAG-AFTRA is a really strange union, because like in the past, 5+ years ago, I did some audiobooks, both narration and also editing. And I did some of them on like a commission basis and some of them on a straight payment basis. And I'm not a union employee. I'm not a union member of SAG-AFTRA, and some, contracts require and some don't. And for the ones where I was paid on a basis of just, hey, here's a chunk of change, not a commission basis, I made more than $4,000 to do an entire audiobook. And I'm nobody now, and I was even more of a nobody 5 years ago. And I'm certainly not that good. Well, no, I mean, in terms of notoriety, absolutely, it's true. And so for me and I wasn't that good at it on top of that. And, both of these women that we're talking about here I think are pretty good at their job. So, and I would talk to the SAG-AFTRA, some of the other SAG-AFTRA people in groups and stuff. And a lot of them are just like, struggling artists, for lack of a better phrase. And they were like, yeah, you're making more as a non-SAG-AFTRA employee than we are as SAG-AFTRA union members. I shouldn't say employee, but union members. And I was like, and again, that's a different industry. That's audiobooks versus video games. And I think there's probably a good bit more work involved in the audiobooks because they're just generally going to be longer. They're, many, many hours of just talking.
What book did you read by chance?
There were a few. Some of them didn't get published because
nice, you got your money and just walked out.
Yeah, I mean, but I edited way more than I voiced. I voiced some, and while I got paid for them, I was like, I don't enjoy this, and I don't think I did that good of a job, quite frankly. But the editing, I did a ton of the editing. So, and
I'm sure that was glorious.
It was a time, I'll tell you that much. It's a lot of work for it, and the type of work it is just, you get some, not to go on a tangent, but you get some narrators who are like really good about they just read, and maybe it's a great performance, maybe it's not, but there's not a lot of edits. And then you get others who will repeat the same sentence 8 and 10 times and then they just leave it all into the files they send you. And you're like, I got to pick which one's better. It's a whole mess. So, with that said, it was good money, so I did it. But some big corporations came in and that dried up at one point. So yeah. All that to say is that I don't doubt the $4,000. I also don't doubt the higher price, but either way, it's low. That type of work is definitely low.
Yeah, and just as a capper, she asked for $100K. That I said that only makes sense for her. Yeah, and that's the business reality. You asked for an extremely high price. I don't care if this is a multi-million-dollar franchise. You asked for $100,000.
Well, she asked for 6 figures. We don't know if it was $100,000 or $999,000.
Yeah, true. So that's a pretty big demand, and I mean that's where business and logistics come in. And certainly, if they were looking at, let's say Helena just wanted at a base 100,000, or Jennifer Hale wants like 30,000. It's like, okay, we'll take the lesser of two evils here. We're going to go with Jennifer Hale, because you can't imagine Jennifer Hale was cheaper than Helena Taylor. Like, no, anyone would kill to have Jennifer Hale in their game. But I digress. We have more to go through here. Okay. Corbin Henderson writes in, "Hey Dukes, hope you're doing well. I recently saw some reports that PlayStation was going to hold their showcase on the 20th of the month, but delayed it out of fear of, quote, adding weight, end quote, to Microsoft's arguments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, as it really seems like Sony is trying to manipulate the deal in their favor, even at the expense of their own fans and games. Hope you have just beat the Arkham trilogy for the first time in 2022 in preparation for Gotham Knights, but I'm now worried that Gotham Knights won't be any good kind of day." So yeah, Ben, this is the report that there was to be a showcase, a rumor, I should say, not a report. It's a rumor that there was to be a showcase. This is kind of just a bullshit detector here. How are we feeling about this, given the source?
I mean, it's PlayStation Lifestyle. I've known people who have written for them, and the reports come from Millie, who is a well-known individual, and she seems to have gotten a lot of things right. I know people who use her as a source, and it is often correct as long as they corroborate it. But I don't know anybody, though, who says that they know what PlayStation's planning on doing is full of shit, because let's be frank, PlayStation and Microsoft and Nintendo sometimes don't know what they're doing. So I think it's entirely likely, entirely possible. We heard a lot of rumors about this a couple months ago that maybe September or October we were going to see a showcase. And I wouldn't doubt one bit that they postponed it due to the ongoing conversations about the Microsoft acquisition. But with that said, I don't know. It is a rumor, and of course we're speculating, but I just don't really have any confidence that people actually, every single month, somebody notable and somewhat reliable says PlayStation's going to have a showcase next month, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. Yeah. So I don't know.
I agree completely. I feel like this seems somewhat plausible, given that after the fact you saw the announcement of the Silent Hill stream, and it's like, okay, like there was something that was PlayStation exclusive on the table, but then you see how many other PlayStation announcements were Silent Hill announcements were there, and I think it just starts to not hold water a bit. So my bullshit detector is a little bit up here. Sure. I just I've seen her get a lot wrong. So to me, I just wanted to talk about it a bit for Corbin and the audience's sake, to say there's a lot of things happening surrounding this. But I don't think, despite my disagreements with what the CMA said, that they're so out of touch that they would forget PlayStation makes a lot of exclusives.
Right.
And that not doing a showcase now throws that out the window. That's not in their mind. Again, you are kind of going off of from my talk with Hogue, he does emphasize again, like you're kind of going off the whim of how a regulator's feeling. And maybe calling attention in that moment could hurt them more than I'm giving credit for. But I would like to say that they're already very aware of the situation, since a lot of their argument is based in PlayStation's business model, which they got the information from. So,
well, let's not forget that it kind of the beginning of the CMA talk, and even a little bit before that, PlayStation had an exclusive beta and exclusive giveaways for Call of Duty, the game in question, on the console that's calling, like on the platform that's calling out the other. Like, yeah, that was already planned. You couldn't really go back on that. You can't go back on Call of Duty. But if that didn't draw their attention, a showcase certainly wouldn't have.
Yeah, I agree. That leaves us with our third and final question before we get into the news. Gabriel Garland writes in, "Hey Dukes, with Persona about to hit Xbox for the first time, I'm interested, but really don't know what to expect. Could you give me the elevator pitch for the franchise and suggest a game I should jump into first? Thanks, and have I just bought a penthouse in Terrace kind of day." Well, congrats to you, Gabriel. We love the planet of Terrace. Yeah, I thought this was important because this was a game that Atlas did give me early access to, but I had to make my, as Cog and I call it, business decisions. And I decided to leave Persona to the wayside on Xbox until I could dive into it after all my reviews. What I will say, as someone who's a huge fan of this franchise, is you can start anywhere. If you are interested in 3 portable or 4 golden coming out in January, you can start on those. If you're interested in just 5 royal, you can play that right now. Like, you can dive in wherever you'd like. There is no connection. There's minor Easter eggs. So let me just put that out of the way, Gabriel, that you don't have to worry about where you start with this franchise. And it's one of the biggest benefits of it because it's a big JRPG franchise. These games are long, and it's good that they're not all directly connected. Speaking of long, big question a lot of people ask is like, could I play? Will I have the time to? I always say with Persona 5 Royal, there's never a good time to start it. It's a long game, like 130 plus hours long. In my playthrough, because I reloaded my save file, 150 almost by doing everything. I got the platinum, all that stuff. So it inches close to that mark, even on a general playthrough. So you should be aware that this will be a time sink. I will say it's probably the best time sink you can make, but it will be a sink nonetheless that you'll do over the course of a month or two. I think it'll be very worth your time, but I want to throw that out there. And the third thing I just want to throw is a little trick about social links, because this system confuses a lot of new fans coming in. You're going to be able to hang out with your friends, right, and spend time with them. They're all based off different arcanas, like the Magician and so on and so forth, the Chariot. And what you want to do is make sure when you hang out with those different arcanas, like Ryuji, I think, is the Chariot, make sure you have a Chariot persona with you. This sounds confusing, but just remember what I said. And when you get in the game and you start making Persona, which is basically Pokemon, you'll start to see all their types, and that'll make more sense. And you'll get more social experience, and you could see more of what the game has to offer. And make sure you max out Kasumi. Make sure you max out Maruki. Okay? Get that royal ending, or else and if you don't know or remember, just make sure you have up a little reminder and a guide, like what I need to do to unlock the royal ending, because that is the part of the game that is like peak fiction that I fell in love with, that spawned me making a video game. Like that's why I must emphasize, please make sure you get to that ending if you are going all the way in. But Ben, you wanted to say something, so go for it.
Well, I just wanted to give a perspective from somebody who's not a JRPG super fan on the series. And I like JRPGs sometimes, but not all the time necessarily. I played a little bit of 4 Golden, and by a little bit, I mean probably like 5 to 10 hours at most. This was years ago now. Yeah. And it just didn't jive with me. That doesn't mean it's not good. It just wasn't what I was in the mood for in that moment. Yeah. I played 5 Royal on PlayStation, and I probably played, I don't know, between 30 and 40 hours of it. I was having fun the entire time. There was not a point. It just, something else came out and I moved on and never went back. And now it feels like insurmountable to go back. But what I will say is that I very much enjoyed the combat system. The combat is excellent. The turn-based is awesome. I'm not a huge fan of the social links and hanging out in a high school with 15-year-old anime girls, but that's just my perspective.
I respect that.
Yeah. What I will say is if you're willing to put 20, 30 hours in a game, just go and play through the first, get into the first dungeon. And if by that point you're still not jiving with it, you may still end up liking it, but it may not be for you. This is my experience, at least.
Yeah.
If you make it past that point and you're enjoying it, then from what I've heard and been told, and a little bit I played past that, you should enjoy it. Like, you should have a lot of fun. But for me, I tried to play in Golden, and for whatever reason, it just didn't hit. But 5, as soon as I turned it on, I was like, I'm into this. So that's the perspective from someone who's not a JRPG super fan.
Of course. And I think that balance is really important because I'm big on this series. I adore this. Is one of my favorite JRPG series. And so, yeah, I speak very highly of it. I think what you mentioned is really an important indicator. Like, that first 10 hours of Persona 5 Royal, I think are really good. I think it's one of the few JRPGs that doesn't have that tried and true slow start. We're going to warm up. I just think the themes they tackle and how dark the game gets quickly is nice because it does make it where I think the second chapter is a little slower, but by that point you should either know if you're hooked or not as the game systems open up more and more. But what I will say is
weird things, don't play it.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird. Okay.
It is weird, but it's a steady inclination, and that's what I love about that game. It steadily gets better, and it's the only game I can say that's not like open world where you had a bunch of distractions, where you're talking like 150 hours of pure story and activities that just held my interest the whole way.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's tough to do. So that's all I got to say, man. Dive right in, Gabriel. Have a good time and enjoy everyone else who goes into this series. It is a fantastic one. I will throw this out there. I'm sorry. Last warning. If you really want to play Persona 3 and 4, like you want to go all in on this series, you might want to wait till they come out, because what I will say is going from 5 Royal and all of its magnificent gameplay improvements back to 4 and 3.
Yeah.
It's not going to feel good at all. The dungeons are widely inferior. The combat's wildly inferior. It's just a very different ball game. So keep that in mind, because I do love Persona 4 Golden. I love Persona 3 Portable, but these games do not feel good, especially thanks to Persona 5 Royal. So just keep that in mind for those who are looking to do the deep dive. Now for the news. Number 1. It's a short list today, but number 1 is a great Kickstarter here. Prior to Microsoft's acquisition of Zenimax Media, fans had asked for more Fallout from Obsidian Entertainment. For a while, that seemed impossible. In a world where Microsoft now owns both, it feels as if the table is set for some truly great Fallout games. However, with Obsidian's plate full, and Bethesda claiming Fallout 5 is coming after Elder Scrolls 6, it seems like we won't be getting our hands on anything for at least a decade. However, a new thread has appeared that has set Fallout fans over the deep end with their desires for another Obsidian Fallout game. In an interview with DualShockers discussing the post-apocalyptic franchise's 25th anniversary, Obsidian CEO Feargus Urquhart had the following to say, quote, "Of course, if we ever got the opportunity to make another Fallout game, we'd make it. There's not even a question of whether or not we would do it. It's just, will the opportunity arise? I hung around at Interplay for probably an extra year because I wanted to work on Fallout more. I love Fallout. At some point, we'll start looking into what those next games are going to be. And I wouldn't be surprised if Fallout is not, or I'm sorry, I would be surprised if Fallout is not on that list. If we were to do Fallout, it has to tie in to what Bethesda is doing with Fallout and a lot of other things. But I would always personally say my hope is that before I ride off into the sunset, I'd love to make another Fallout game," end quote. Anthony A. with the write-in. Hey, Dukes. Even though Obsidian Entertainment's plate is full currently with the likes of Pentiment, Avowed, The Outer Worlds 2, and Grounded, the studio co-founder Feargus Urquhart would love for the studio to return to Fallout. Call me crazy, but this appears to be an open invitation from Feargus to Todd saying, pick up the phone and let's make this happen. What say you, gentlemen? Stay sexy. Anthony A. I love the outro there, Anthony. Thank you for writing in. Ben, you know I got a mountain of things to say here, so I don't mean to say it in a way where get your thoughts out of the way, but please, I'd like for you to go first.
I mean, we need a new Fallout game, right? We need Obsidian to work on it. We know that. I think it's awesome that they've opened this line of dialogue. I think it's awesome that they've said they're interested, or at least he's interested, and he wants to do it. He loves the franchise. But he said something that, like, I feel is key. He said, if we ever got the opportunity And then he says, will the opportunity arise? And I don't think what he's saying there is they won't let us, much to Anthony's question of why not just pick up the phone. I think it's more of like, there is an opportunity cost to making something different than what you're currently making. And for this moment, I don't know that he put that much thought into saying it that way, but in my opinion, it's not, will we get the chance to? It's when will it be feasible for Obsidian to work on a Fallout game? And that's a lot different than just pick up the phone to me. We clearly need a new Fallout game, like I said, and we would love for Obsidian to work on it. But that doesn't mean that the projects they're working on can just take a sidestep to Fallout.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that they would just naturally be able to mesh these studios together to work on a game, or to just give it to Obsidian, despite them having essentially what amounts to a live service game and lots of other stuff on their plate. So I think that it's good to know that Urquhart is not opposed. Like, he's not like, I hate Fallout, I never want to work on it again. That's good to know. And it certainly presents the opportunity in the future for if it ever came about. But that also goes back to like, well, here's our strategic plans, probably for at least 5 to 7 years. Where do we fit this in here? We've got 8 other projects planned. How do we get this going? So I'm sure you have a billion things to say, though. So I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah, I definitely do. This was exciting to read because Obsidian has always said they're interested. Like, dating back to 2013, they pitched a whole idea for a new Fallout game, which is Fallout New Orleans. They've said in multiple interviews since, even Josh Sawyer, the director of Pentiment, said in 2017, like, we'd love to work on another Fallout game. So the thing I worry about is time here, and not the time that we often talk about, like, when are we getting a new Fallout game? It's that the people who are at Obsidian now, and specifically one of the main people who define today what Fallout is, being Josh Sawyer, thanks to New Vegas, among many other talented people at Obsidian, want to do it. Maybe not right now, Josh, but did want to do it, did have interest in doing it. And there will come a time that they want to retire and they maybe move on. And that's what I worry about, is obviously you want them to make what they want to make. That's why Pentiment exists. That's why Grounded exists. That's why Avowed and The Outer Worlds 2. Like, I am all for Obsidian making these games, but much to what you said about opportunity costs, like, some of that is time, right? That, okay, we push this down the line more. We're that much closer to retirement. We're talking nigh a decade. What does the industry look like at that point? And what I think about a lot is, what does Fallout look like? One metric that we don't have available to us in this conversation is, we've seen a lot of TV to game impact, specifically with CD Projekt Red, right? What I've been thinking a lot about and stewing over, what's the TV to game impact for Fallout going to look like? When Amazon drops their show, what is the Fallout game that's going to pick
Fallout
up?
Shelter and Fallout 76, baby. Come on, let's go.
I mean, that's the thing, though, is if it does pick up that way and Bethesda reads that, what is the next Fallout entry like? Does it have mandatory co-op? Right now, it's in a moment of uncertainty, as 76 was catastrophic. It's picked itself up a bit, but now it's at a time where it can re-identify what it is, for better or for worse. And that's where my head has gone, is now we have time working against us. And it's why for a while I championed the idea of, like, alongside many others, by the way, remasters, those types of things, just to remind people, and obviously check market data, like, hey, if we re-release Fallout 3 and we see how many people are actually willing to buy this still, and this type of Fallout game, like first person, open world, single player RPG. So that's the first place my head actually went. Wasn't, how do we get this happening soon? It's like, what does the series become by the point that they're all ready to work on this? Because Bethesda is going to define that vision, no doubt about it. It's their IP. They're going to say, this is what we're doing with Fallout 5. You can do whatever you want. That doesn't have anything to deal with this. And so that, to me, is scary but exciting, because now we're seeing the possibility that, much like what happened with Fallout 3 in New Vegas, where you got 3 in 2008, and then you got New Vegas 2 years later in 2010. I mean, that, God almighty, what a great time to be alive. we never thought we'd see something like that again. Now it seems the way these two's timetables might end up, where around the same time with Elder Scrolls 6 being done and with Avowed and The Outer Worlds 2 being done, they might be lining up for back-to-back Fallout games. And that is exciting. But it's all about time with talent and time with delivering content for the fan base now and what that looks like. Of course, I think remasters are the easiest answer, but I think a lot back to that original idea I had of The Vault, making a studio called The Vault. Because what we're learning here with this Activision deal is a lot of people are putting their eggs in this basket right now, community-wise, by the way. We don't know what Microsoft's thinking, but they're all thinking like, we need to get this deal done no matter what, all in on the Activision train because it's the new thing. But this is why if I'm Microsoft, I'm trying to pose the IP I currently own for success, because if this deal for Activision falls through, you still have your first party portfolio, and that's what matters, not what you're going to have. So you need to set up Fallout for the future to have success and not sit on it, because resting on the idea that we're going to buy our way into quarterly releases, that's great, but these are IP that deserve attention. Same with Elder Scrolls, same with Fallout. And it'd be one thing if this is just a Bethesda Obsidian thing, but across Bethesda, Obsidian, In Exile, you're fortunate enough to have what I would say are some of the best RPG minds in the industry, let alone some of the people who helped make the first Fallout game.
It's like the dream team, for sure.
In the case of Bethesda, the people who redefined Fallout for a modern audience and made it relevant to folks like me, maybe even you, Ben. And I think that type of stuff needs to be taken advantage of. We see like executive producer roles are something that, how do I want to word this? Microsoft could have a chance rather to make smart use of the executive producer role by pulling in like a Brian Fargo, a Feargus Urquhart, a Tim Cain, Leonard Boyarsky, Todd Howard, of course, and just saying, you don't got to work on this. Lay your eyes on what this team's doing, though, and offer input, feedback on where we're going to go with this game, and kind of shepherd in a new era of Fallout developers, especially when Bethesda's hiring modders now. Like the table, again, as I wrote in my article here, is set for some really good Fallout content if it gets the focus it deserves. But it feels like right now we're at a standstill, and that's okay. But now we got to pick a direction. Do we go in the direction of it's on ice, we're going to wait for it? Because I'm not calling for annualized Fallout games, but
hopefully not, as a matter of fact.
Yes, definitely not. But the idea of a little more regularity in the franchise, that you can expect more Fallout content, and it being a true Fallout game. Like 76 can exist, but it shouldn't serve as the replacement for what built Fallout for over a decade. So to me, I just feel this is exciting what Obsidian CEO Feargus Urquhart is saying, but we need answers for now for this franchise. It's great that Bethesda's got the Fallout 5 one-pager. It's great that Obsidian wants to do this, but Feargus wants to do this, by the way. That's the other thing we didn't talk about, and I'm curious as your thoughts on this. Feargus wants to do this. Does the rest of the team want to do this?
Right.
Because a lot of the New Vegas staff, last thing I'll say, a lot of New Vegas staff isn't on Obsidian's team anymore. They've moved to all different companies. Like one of the lead, I think, technical programmers there is now a gameplay programmer at Sony Santa Monica, like the senior gameplay programmer there for God of War Ragnarok. Like they've all dispersed for the most part. Like more than half that team is gone.
Right. I think what you're saying there about shepherding in a new team while you still have the talent, like everybody has either their own experience or has heard of an experience or something of like, everybody loved Grandma Susie's pasta sauce, but we didn't learn how to make it from her before she died. And now we'll never get it again. And so when these developers retire, they go away, do you lose the heart of what makes a Fallout game? Like, people like you and I grew up with Fallout, but could we make a Fallout game? Probably, but would it be the same?
I'd like to try one day.
Right. Yeah. Like we could probably, bring the pieces in of it that we admire and that we saw needed improvement, or we saw were perfect and need to stay there or whatever. But like, is it ever going to be just like Grandma Susie's? And so you're right about like, I hadn't really considered that perspective of just like shepherding in those new people while the people who brought about the series to begin with are still around. Yeah. There are lots of great developers on all of those games, and certainly some of them are still with the studios. but they're not all going to be around forever. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I mean, it's crazy to think about, but like some of them, you start a game and it takes 5 years. Some of them are going to be retiring and on their way out in one way or another by that point. So that's a really good perspective I hadn't thought about. It's just that the time element, not only of fitting it into your production schedule, but into the time when you have people to shepherd it along is a huge thing that you can't just slap Fallout on a game and it's Fallout. You got to have some of that heart to it as well. It's a ship of Theseus situation, to coin a phrase, I guess.
No, for sure. It's funny that it comes up because I didn't think of this until now, but when we talked about Starfield's dialogue last week, I was perusing through my comment section, and one thing I noticed a lot of people talking about is, and I say this with all due respect, like Todd Howard's starting to look a little older now.
Yeah.
And, it's fine, we're human, but you see that type of stuff and it's like, yeah, this guy is probably rich out of his mind, but he's one of the most brilliant minds this industry has. Like, it would be unwise to not make use of that. Not in the way that Bethesda's doing is wrong, where they're saying like, let him go executive produce the Indiana Jones game, because he just always wanted to do that. Like, that's cool. Sure. He's earned that right. But I feel like the passing on of the torch, like a Todd Howard protege, needs to occur. And maybe that happens to this Fallout studio or something along those lines. I think it's just, we have to make use of the talent we have now, because they're not around forever. And if you really want to business it up and just say like, this is a business decision, it's best for the business that you have minds that are trained to think about the series in a way that the people who helped build it made it that way. So it's one that I'm excited about, and the premise that down the line there will be more Fallout. That's what's being said here. It could just be dead, right? But there's everyone saying we're going to make Fallout. It's just now we're seeing a huge gap, probably dating to 2030 right now.
Yeah. This is a really dumb comparison, but I'm going to make it anyway. I literally worked at a store when I was in high school, and the manager straight up died and had the only keys to the place. And we had customers that needed in that we could not let in. We could not get in ourselves and they went elsewhere. And I mean, God forbid, but everybody dies, right? Like that's a part of life, is dying. You wait too long and the customers are going elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean, hey, is there anything more fitting than a tale of waiting for a Fallout game being about existentialism now?
That's true.
But that's all I personally had to say on the matter. I strongly believe they need to look into a new studio. I know it's probably a dying wish now, but I do still I still hold the desire, even though I don't have the wish. I have the desire, not the wish, sorry. I have the desire, but I don't believe it'll happen. A Fallout remaster of some kind. Like, even if they did the other older games, some type of activity, some type of life in this franchise is desperately needed. And the way they're celebrating this 25th anniversary, to me, is just a punctuation mark on the fact that nothing's going to happen, but we should still be speaking out against it.
I'm preaching to the choir here, but I just don't understand, like, what are the metrics showing them? Like, all of these decisions are business based, right? Like Microsoft, Bethesda, none of them do things just because they feel good about it necessarily. We'd like to think that they do because we like those companies, but like, are they seeing that like there's not enough sales potential there because of metrics they have from the past? I can't imagine that's true.
Possible. Yeah,
it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, so I understand that talent is finite, and I probably should have emphasized this further, although I know I said it, but I want people to understand I'm not calling for Obsidian to get yanked off any project like Cain, Avowed, or The Outer Worlds 2. I love The Outer Worlds. I want to see that sequel. I don't know anything about Avowed outside of that screenshot and what Jez Corden has written about it, but what I've heard sounds great.
Yeah.
And Grounded surprised me. Pentiment, I'm sure, will deliver. So I'm all in on this Obsidian vision, and they have every right to go in this direction. That's why you need to find an answer now, so that when they're at their best, in a lot of respects, they can work on that Fallout game, even if time has worked against them a bit, and that we have different answers for fans. And this is the case for a lot of, by the way, Xbox IP. It could go into a whole other conversation on the likes of like Banjo-Kazooie. Just Xbox is now, when they get Activision, if that is to happen, are going to be sitting on not just like a mountaintop, but whatever is bigger than a mountain of dead IP that people are going to want to have revived, from Guitar Hero to Singularity, all the way to Skylanders. There's so many different things that people are going to want to see come back.
Right.
And I know Xbox has only so many directions they can take this in, but they'd be wise to tap the IP that's generated hundreds of millions of dollars on the shoulder through mobile, through online play, and of course being a single player RPG. But that's just one Fallout fan's take. All right, number 2. We'll spare everyone now. Despite Xbox's reasonable arguments last week, the CMA currently remains unswayed. They began by targeting Microsoft's stance that it wouldn't make financial sense for them to make Activision Blizzard games exclusive, notably Call of Duty. They said, quote, financial modeling of the merger suggests that the merged entity's incentive to foreclose Sony may be considerably stronger than suggested by the parties. Microsoft's past business practices suggest that it may be willing to make losses in the short term in order to build scale and increase its user base. This is in reference to the Bethesda exclusivity, by the way. The CMA continued saying, quote, they did not identify any persuasive evidence that Microsoft would be deterred from engaging in total or partial I am tongue-tying up a storm this episode, or partial foreclosure strategies by the prospect of reputational damage to Xbox or Call of Duty, end quote. The CMA follows up this claim by saying Microsoft, quote, would have a detrimental impact on overall competition in the market and ultimately harm consumers, end quote, if Call of Duty were to go exclusive at any point. They also dispelled the notion that Nintendo's tremendous success without Call of Duty is a fair argument. They say that this is Sony is Microsoft's closest rival in a, quote, highly concentrated market, end quote, and that Nintendo offers, quote, differentiated hardware with more family-friendly software, end quote. Now, we have official details regarding the terms of the Call of Duty deal with Activision and Sony. Confirmed via documents submitted to the CMA, Microsoft offered to give Sony Call of Duty up until 2027. Officially, Sony has rejected this offer. Indeed, this information does imply that Xbox may have had plans to put Call of Duty on Game Pass day one immediately. Microsoft has also stated that Sony has more than sufficient time to ensure that both its platform and content portfolio is in a competitive position to withstand any impact from a hypothetical foreclosure strategy. With the offer left unsigned, this means that if the deal were to go through, that Call of Duty could actually go exclusively to Xbox platforms beginning in 2024 with its newest entry. The newest set of documents also firm up that currently Sony is blocking Call of Duty titles from being on Game Pass for a number of years through an agreement with Activision Blizzard. So what a tangled web we weave here beyond my own words and vocabulary. But Ben, Cog and I and all the guests we've had on have talked about this borderline ad nauseum. We continue to cover it because it feels like every week, like you saw the script when I sent it to you. We have 4 items on the news report. This was at number 4 because in my mind, I'm like, audience is probably tired of this. It's just another day in the week of the CMA. No problem. Let's just leave it in the back. Then this whole thing pops off with Game Pass deals, 2027. We're getting official confirmation on years, dates, what's happening. So I want to hand it off to you with the information here. How are you feeling overall about the ongoing issue debacle between the CMA, Sony, Microsoft, but also Sony putting up some restrictions here, withholding Call of Duty from Game Pass?
That's not surprising. I don't think anybody's surprised by that. We know that that's their entire strategy here. Like, I don't think they necessarily care as much about, like, if they had to choose between between Microsoft putting Call of Duty on Game Pass or Microsoft making Call of Duty exclusive, I think they would pick exclusive. Because putting it on Game Pass just bolsters their service and draws more people to them. Certainly putting it on their consoles exclusively brings people to them as well, but it doesn't bolster the service that they're clearly scared of. So, I mean, I have nothing to base that on other than reading the room, but I really do think that if you put a gun to Jim Ryan's head, which I do not recommend, by the way, and said, which of these do you prefer? He would definitely say no Game Pass, but it can be exclusive. So as far as all this other stuff, I first of all like how you said we'll spare the audience and then moved into this topic.
I thought of that when I went into it.
Yeah.
A really bad segue.
So I will say that the CMA, I think, has a couple points here. And I will remind the audience that I am incredibly console agnostic, platform agnostic. So I feel like I can be a decent judge on this. But them saying that they do not identify any persuasive evidence that Microsoft could be deterred from engaging in total or partial foreclosure strategies, yada, yada, yada. I think that's true. I mean, Microsoft has said that they can't make it feasible without putting it on PlayStation as well. And that probably is the case. But we also know that Microsoft has more money than God, and they can kind of do what they want. Indeed. And if it really pays off for them long term, then it's okay if they lose a little money in the short term or a lot of money in the short term. Now, maybe their shareholders don't agree, and maybe that's not the smartest business model in the traditional sense, but we've seen with a lot of other deals they've done that they're willing to put up big time money in order to gain long-term money. Like they're willing to put up a lot of money now in order to hopefully make that back in 10 years, whatever. And I think that that's true. They also said that they dispel the notion that Nintendo's tremendous success without Call of Duty is a fair argument. I agree with that, because Nintendo's success, if Nintendo put Call of Duty on the Switch, would it help sell them? Yes. Would it be a game changer? No. Nintendo doesn't need big AAA non-Nintendo games. It's nice that they have them. People are certainly going to play them there, but it's not that huge of a deal because it's Nintendo, and they have Mario, and they have Zelda, and they have everything else. Sure. There was one other piece here that I saw. I can't find it now, but all in all, I'm ready for the deal to go through. We know the deal is going to happen. Everybody at Sony knows the deal is going to happen. Now, whether they demand concessions or not from them and they have to give up something, we saw this week that the CMA demanded that Meta sell off Giphy or something like that. And and Meta was like, okay, sure. Like, what do we do they make money from Giphy? Probably, but I don't know how. And I just think that this deal is going to go through, and they're just trying to buy themselves a little more time until they can do the next thing. I've talked a lot, so obviously I want your thoughts, but I do want to definitely dive into the numbers we got on the timelines, the actual years and stuff.
Yeah, that's what called my name the most, and I guess it's because I've had the benefit of really talking about this exhaustingly so, where when I see that new crop of information, my eyes light up a little bit and go, ooh, it's not just them talking back and forth. Like, we actually have, they did have the offer up until 2024, and Phil did offer to extend it to 2027. Like, now we know for sure, because I don't even know where the information originally came from. We know Jim Ryan said when this all really kickstarted back before Brazil was approving the deal, that he said it was a 3-year extension, but we don't know really where that necessarily began or ended. So now we have those numbers. To me, the Game Pass strategy where PlayStation is paying developers to keep content off the service makes sense.
Yeah.
I understand why they do it. And I agree with you that I think they'd almost rather Call of Duty go exclusively in some capacity. Yeah. I think they'd rather have neither, but I think if they had to pick one or the other, I agree. They'd probably rather just have them have it exclusively. But then again, that brings Game Pass into the mix. But I understand what you were saying, that Game Pass is going to grow a ton when there's like, hey, we have the whole Call of Duty vault here and every new one. It's just guaranteed millions of eyes on your service.
And it's almost a guaranteed 12-month subscription.
That's a good point.
Like, there's a lot of people I know, I'm not one of them, but there's a lot of people I know who a new game, Scorn comes out. They want to play Scorn. They hop in for a month. They pay their $10 or $15, depending on which plan they get. And then next month they bail out.
Yeah.
When Call of Duty's on there, a lot of people aren't dropping the service.
Yeah, it's very true. To me, though, what I always find interesting as I thought about this more and more is we roll back the clock a bit, and there was a time that Xbox was out of the race and pretty much out of the industry with the Xbox One, famously, or infamously, I should say. And it was at that time that they had their make or break moment. What do we do that differentiates our platform in the spirit of competition as Sony paddles our ass here? And they said, okay, we're going to do this service called Game Pass. Yeah. We're going to give out exclusives day and date, and we're going to create pretty much the Netflix vault for video games.
Yeah.
And they went forward with that. We saw it grow over time. In 2020, I think we saw its big leap forward where they said, all right, now we're moving from not just PC, but we're incorporating other services in. So now we're going to have EA Play, part of the fun. 2021 starts. That's when we began to see third-party day one games on Game Pass. It's like, okay, now it's not just first party. We can get anybody.
Right.
And services ramped up because this is the avenue that Microsoft and Xbox have decided to take as PlayStation took their route. So to me, all this was created in the spirit of competition, right? Like, okay, Sony has worked us out of one spot in the industry. For us to live, we must do something else. And they did just that. For them to then pay to keep stuff off of their platform on top of their platform being Game Pass, on top of paying stuff to be exclusively on their platform, and then for the CMA to claim that Microsoft has a chance to foreclose PlayStation when that exact game is what almost killed Xbox. The hypocrisy stands out to me so strongly here. And I'm usually not one to get riled up about this because I'm much like you. I've sat through this whole thing and been like, I'm ready for this to go through. I'm ready for this to go through. And, you know, we definitely are at the disadvantage of talking about it so much that maybe most people don't even think about it. But for us seeing it all go on, it's like, okay, let's just shove this thing along now. Let's finally put the green stamp on it. But when I see things like that, I don't care what box you root for. That doesn't ring properly to me that we're openly, actively in one region of the world, protecting the interests of the market leader so hard that now we got to think about what happens on the other end. Okay, so deal gets canceled, which I don't think it will. I'm with you. I think it'll go through, but deal gets canceled. Now you're starting to say to Xbox, play PlayStation's game, buy games exclusively, put them on your platform, bring up the Great Walls. It's like, okay, Microsoft has way more money than PlayStation could ever hope to have. And now they're going to enter a bidding war with them on that side. It's almost like, I think you've put the best concluding note on it, is that they know this will go through. And almost I think they would want to go through, because I think the other side of this, if they were to start getting in those bidding wars, it's almost like determining whether or not Xbox is interested or not. And that's all that determines who's going to win the bidding war. It's like, oh, does Xbox not have interest? Then we can get it, because they would outbid them any day of the week.
Right.
So I could spin my wheels here for a while, but I want to dish it back to you.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing about the dates is, and I think you alluded to this, where did we get the numbers for, or the years for how long Sony's contract lasted, their marketing deal? I thought it was for 2 more years or 3 more years. I think
it was based off Bloomberg reporting Call of Duty was going to skip next year and get another entry in 2024.
Yeah.
And I think people use that to then jump off with what Jim Ryan said about 3 years later, we'll have that deal still active, which would then make it 2027. That's my estimation. Because I didn't see any official comment saying, we had it until today, we had it until 2024, and now it's 2027.
Because this information seems to say that that deal isn't inked. Like that was maybe an offer at some point.
Yes.
And I don't know, maybe I'm not enough of a risk taker. But if you said to me, like, look, you can sign this deal and we can guarantee you Call of Duty for 3 or 4 or 5 more years, and then we'll renegotiate, or we're just going to take it and put it on Game Pass, I would be like, where do I sign? So I can guarantee 4 or so more years of immense amounts of revenue for doing almost nothing. And I just don't get it. I don't understand Sony's perspective here. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. I know all the arguments for and against Game Pass. I know all the arguments for and against acquisitions. I know I've heard it all, not only because I edit 6 shows a week for LSM, but because I've been consuming video games, all media all over for 15 or more years. I've never seen anything like this where a company could lose so big and is willing to take the gamble on the hopes of the government stopping it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just wild to me. The whole thing's wild. I don't think I'm
Yeah,
saying
'cause-
anything you haven't said already, but
No, because I think we're coming to the conclusion that right now, because I didn't even think of it that way. I did in my article clearly, but when you were talking, I came back to me like, yeah, the fact that they're kind of playing with fire here, and I imagine it's because Xbox has already publicly stated like we will do concessions, and because they are saying that, it's by default. I think someone along the line here, and it looks like the CMA will be that government regulatory body is going to ask for those concessions, that PlayStation seeing how much they can get out of it because they know by default it's going to happen. But at least from a bystander's perspective, I'm right there with you. I'm thinking, well, if that doesn't go in your favor, now you've pissed off Xbox, right? And they will have the opportunity to lock this shit down if they so desire, which I don't think they would. But put it day one on Game Pass. I mean, that was always the plan.
Right.
And I think we talked about, if you ask Jim Ryan what he would rather have, it's funny because I think, Phil would absolutely rather have day one Game Pass over exclusivity because that's their future, man. And that's their service. And they want that big time. Like, I think this is going to be the point where we see things really pick up because now we're talking the Call of Duty deal. It's funny. Like, we haven't seen Diablo, Crash Bandicoot, like all these multi-million-dollar franchises be brought up. It's just Call of Duty. This is all, if anything has not become perfectly clear, no matter the hatred surrounding it, Call of Duty is a very important franchise now and forever.
Think about the amount of Sony's workforce that Call of Duty being on the platform, that 30%, how much of their workforce that funds. Certainly some of it's just going into profits and into shareholders' pockets, and that's fine. That's the way business works and shareholders work. But how many people are on board to help support Call of Duty and the network infrastructure and the sales pages and everything else like that? Like,
it was just a brand deal.
It is a lot of money that they would be potentially losing. They're already going to be losing the money of the marketing deal once their current one, however long it actually goes away. Like they're losing that advantage. Let me say that they're actually paying to get that advantage, but it's clearly worth it to them. So yeah, let's play a little game though, Maddie.
Okay,
if you don't mind.
I'm down. Let's do it.
What kind of concessions could they ask Microsoft for? What's on the table? Like we have actually absolutely no idea. But what could they actually ask Microsoft for? No more third-party games on Game Pass.
Yeah, you'd have to imagine. I think the first place everyone's head would likely go to has to be like no Call of Duty exclusivity forever.
Sure,
but if my talk with Hogue taught me anything, it's that like there's no way any Microsoft lawyer would sign off on anything indefinitely just because of change of hands, change of guard. The leadership that's there will be different now and 20 years from now and 30 years from now and so on and so forth. So I feel like that's where my head wants to go right away is like, how do we guarantee we're going to get this? Maybe you negotiate a better revenue split for yourself so that you're not losing out big time for while it's there. Because I think in the spirit of competition here, again, this is based off what I was saying with Game Pass and whatnot. I don't know if PlayStation will make anything that catches up to Call of Duty in that time. Because certainly developers have been trying for decades.
Right.
But PlayStation has great first-person shooter franchises that are dormant and shooter franchises they could go out and make or get brand exclusivity deals with to kind of make up that loss. And I think, again, that's where the spirit of competition rears its head again, much like in the position Microsoft is in. Sony's a little uncomfortable here. And I feel like they could answer the bell in a number of ways. But to your ultimate question, I think maybe they concede. Again, I think the revenue split is going to be a big one.
Yeah.
I think no Game Pass. I think they're going to try to work out like no Game Pass for 5 years. Like I think they're going to try something that gives them a sizable margin to work within where they say in 5 years, we need to have like 3 first-person shooters ready to rock and roll. So by the time that deal expires, our answer is waiting for them. Like I think they want to have time to make a game plan. And that's what they're betting on.
Along with that, when Sony decides, or maybe they've already decided or whatever, that they're going to start making first-person shooters or they're making first-person shooters, Microsoft better be ready to pay their employees. I'm not saying they're getting paid unfair now by Activision. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's going to be real tempting for one of the thousands and thousands of employees that work at Activision now to jump over to Sony to work on a brand new or a storied franchise. And Microsoft's going to end up having to spend a lot of money to keep them, I think, for retention. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be, I mean, there's no doubt, like, you have to assume that Sony is going to be working on some sort of first-person shooter. Or maybe they already have been. I don't know.
I'd hope so. They have. I want to see Resistance come back, man. I love that series. Like, if Resistance is born through Activision, that's a bigger win to me than any fucking Call of Duty game on Game Pass. I hate to say it. Like, that's
absolutely.
I want that shit back so bad.
I just can't. I mean, if you're an employee there and you get that offer come in, like, that's just the biggest, like, bargaining chip, I think. Mm-hmm. As long as you're not some, I don't mean derogatory, but a low level employee. Like, mm-hmm. If you're a Call of Duty director in any department, like, Sony's headhunting you. Mm-hmm. And I think the money will start to fly in that way too. So this deal could actually end up costing them both quite a bit of money. In the long run.
That's a good thought. Yeah. So we'll see what they concede, but certainly that'll be a part of this all. I don't have any worries right now when it comes to this deal, just because if this deal was not looked at under a microscope, it is the biggest deal our particular industry has ever seen. Mm-hmm. It should be treated as such. Yeah. I just think a lot of people are jarred with the fights that are occurring. By the way, we all are, because we've never seen these two go back and forth like this. Right. But I think we're jarred with the fighting on this versus what happened with Bethesda. It was very just wait. And what we always have to remind ourselves is no one is an expert on this. I'm not saying that to excuse our show, by the way, but I don't think anyone is close to an expert on this because, number one, it seems to be an unpredictable time for regulators, given that they're cracking down on big tech. You mentioned Meta having to sell off Giphy. It's just like, okay, I guess. Yeah. And right. And just like really strong arming.
Microsoft could sell off Clippy.
Yeah, right. It's just a big different time for regulators. Yeah. And all of us as an industry are learning because we're in a time of great consolidation. So we're all seeing how these deals unfold, some smoother than others. So this is a great value. It's a valuable learning lesson that we should all pay close attention to, and we'll continue to do so. But hopefully next show we'll have this down lower on the list. All right, number 3. Over 1,000 layoffs have hit Microsoft. This news lands via a report by outlet Business Insider. It is said the impacted staff are from their Xbox division as well as the Microsoft Strategic Missions and Technology Organization. It's also been unveiled that Studio Alpha, which was built around the idea of being a, quote, serious gaming initiative, end quote, that makes cloud-based war game simulations for military and commercial customers, is among the departments being closed down entirely. Based on tweets from the staff, these layoffs arrive as a surprise to those affected. Greg Chapman, who is principal architect at Studio Alpha, tweeted the following, quote, "Well, it's been an adventure. Today, me and my entire team were laid off. 12 years here at Microsoft, 25 in game development. Details shortly once the shock wears off," which currently, as of the time of reading this, there aren't any additional details. In a statement to Business Insider, a Microsoft spokesperson wrote, quote, "Like all companies, we evaluate our business priorities on a regular basis and make structural adjustments accordingly. We will continue to invest in our business and hire in key growth areas in the year ahead." So, Ben, to me, this reads like this place wasn't making us much money, so we cut them off. But I have worked for myself my entire life, so I feel like my input here is very amateur. So I'd love to hear from you on this.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who has both been an employee and an employer in several different areas, it's not surprising. Like, obviously, once again, to state it, we don't want to ever see anybody lose their jobs by no fault of their own. That sucks, no matter what the situation is. But I'm also I've got a pretty good I don't say pretty good, but I've got a pretty capitalist mindset. Mm-hmm. And when you're dealing with something like Microsoft, one of the biggest corporations in the world, and you've got shareholders and you've got people who need to make their dollars, like, if there's just an initiative you're deciding not to pursue because the margins aren't going to be what you need them to be, and you can't find somewhere else to put those employees, of course you're going to lay them off. Like, there's just no... I understand people are like, oh, meanwhile, so-and-so makes $250 million a year and they couldn't shell out an extra 100,000. They couldn't take 100,000. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. Maybe they're making too much money. But if there's no job for them to do you just pay them to hang out in an office? If the project you're working on, if you're making these war games and suddenly the client that you were making them for says they don't want them anymore, do you just say, well, we'll put you on something else that we don't need you on there either? Like, I feel bad for people who lose their jobs, but I don't always think that the person who laid them off is the bad guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I get that. I totally respect that. It's like the same mindset as the weatherman saying, it's going to rain. Right. And you're like, I'm not wearing my raincoat. There's no way it's going to rain. And you go out and you get poured on anyway. It's like, one of those things where you're just denying reality itself. But I agree with you. Yeah. Because like for starters, and I don't mean this indicates a lack of importance, but I hadn't heard of any of these divisions.
Sure.
But I think you've put it beautifully here. I don't think there's anything I can add on other than it sucks to see layoffs hit the Xbox division in particular during a time of growth. But, I imagine they're likely not interested in investing in war game simulations, and perhaps they're more invested in Japan as a region. Like we've seen, while they have downsized here, they have scaled up in I reported this earlier this year on our show that like they have new people working for them in Korea, in China, in Africa, in Japan. Not to try to sugarcoat what is an unfortunate story here for Microsoft, but what it does say to me is that they are showing interest in other areas, and this just isn't one of them. So I suppose I follow your capitalist mindset.
And again, like maybe they were never interested in, we just keep pointing to the war games thing, but maybe they were never interested in the war games thing, but there was a big chunk of profit to be made because the client wanted it. And now the client doesn't want it. Okay.
Exactly.
Shut it down.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add on that?
No, I'm good. All
right, cool. We'll move on to number 4 here to talk about Minecraft Legends, our last story here for the day. It received new details alongside a brand new trailer. For starters, Xbox's early 2023 picture is starting to come into form as Mojang is targeting a spring 2023 release. Thanks to Minecraft Live 2022, there's now over 20 minutes of the action RTS available online. Legends holds on tightly to the spirit of Minecraft as you can command some workers to either gather or build for you in specific areas of the map, with resource gathering being a primary focus. In the demo, you see the player uses their resources to build a wooden bridge, which allows them to cross a cavern. Now, the new gameplay demo also showed off 4-player co-op, where players would lead their armies against a nether portal while crafting giant arrows to assist their allies and eventually invading the nether base and taking it all down. This game looks great.
Yeah.
I wanted to throw it out there. This game looks really good. I was keen on Minecraft Dungeons. I thought that was a perfect fit, but when I played it, I went, okay. Yeah. Not for me. Not a bad game, but not for me. Minecraft Legends, though, looks like it has that touch of depth that I was hoping for. And so I'm keen on this one. But what did you think about what you saw for Minecraft Legends?
Yeah, I thought it would look cool. I'm a longtime Minecraft fan, and I go through phases where, like, I think we talked about this last time I was here. I go through phases where I don't play it for 2 years.
We did.
And I'm all in on Minecraft for like 3 months, and that's the only thing I'm going to play. So I love it. I don't necessarily need spinoffs of that game, but I understand why you would set it in an existing IP. It makes a lot of sense. Minecraft Legends looks awesome. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and the fact that it's 4-player co-op.
Yes, sir.
Kind of like Minecraft without friends to me is like fun, but Minecraft with friends is really fun. And so a game like Legends or even Dungeons for that matter, I can't imagine that there'll be less fun to be had with a team than there will be by yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Minecraft by yourself is tedious. I say that in the most kind way possible because it's a great game, but just Minecraft on your own, man. You need people building different parts of the base. Like you have to have it. But I'm very excited for Legends and early 2023. So this puts it in company right now with, at least as it stands, Forza Motorsport, Starfield, Redfall. So we're starting to see things come into shape here where if we're looking at the first half of the year, 4 out of the 6 months are covered with first-party games right now, and it's looking like the shotgun blast we all expected. I'm not going to try to overhype Minecraft Legends, but make no mistake, this is going to be a seismic launch for Microsoft. I mean, Minecraft's one of their, if not their biggest IP. So I think this is exciting to see. But what do you think about the early 2023 picture now?
Yeah, I think that's I don't know what I think about the picture overall. I think there's definitely stuff to look at, but I think if you look at it in terms of profitability, then they're probably going to make some money, especially specifically with Minecraft, because I don't think people, even people who think they have an idea, I don't think any of us really have an idea how much money Minecraft actually makes somehow, the Minecraft universe. And this is just going to be, I mean, I've never been real down on their release schedule. Yeah, it sucks that Halo hasn't had content. It sucks that Starfield got delayed out of the year. It sucks that there's been no big, huge first party releases this year. But I just keep going back to Game Pass. I have an infinite amount of stuff I can play, nearly infinite, for me to play on Game Pass. That if there's not something new coming out, I just find a new game, download it, play it, or I play Minecraft again for the 900th hour. So, is this coming to PlayStation? By the way, is Legends coming to PlayStation?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so.
It's really interesting that Minecraft has kind of dodged the exclusive bullet, even though they're purchased by Microsoft. I mean, it makes sense because they're making a lot of money.
5.
Okay, yeah, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, same thing could happen with Call of Duty if we just did a little research, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, that's all we got to say about Minecraft. That's all your major news for the week. We now move into our Game Pass / Back and Pat pick of the week, where Ben, you have this one locked down with a game that you briefly talked about, but you have more to expand upon.
Yeah. So this is a PC Game Pass only game. So I want to start off by saying that. It's called Vampire Survivors. I heard about this game. Dustin told me about it, and then I heard him talk about it on Sacred Symbols as well when I was editing it. And Vampire Survivors is not a game that you feel like you should be playing. It is basically a top-down, very old school graphics game. I think it actually started as a browser game, and right now it's only on PC Game Pass. It is in early access. I think it's available on Steam as well, also in early access, or whatever the Microsoft equivalent is. And basically, it's a roguelike game. You start out, you pick a character. I think you have 4, or you have 1 to start with, and eventually you get 4, and then you can unlock more by doing different things. And you go in, and your characters basically auto attack. I'm using, even though it's on PC, I'm using my controller to play, and you basically, for the gameplay, just move the left joystick around, and you have attacks that automatically go out from your character. And there are lots of fun sounds that happen. And as you kill enemies and you pick up their, I don't know, whatever they are, they give you experience. As you pick them up, you gain levels. And with each level comes an unlock. And you get either one of 3 or 4 choices to pick. And that pick may be for a new type of weapon, a new armor, may buff your skills that you already have, may give you a higher or lower damage on something, but it trades off. And basically, you just try to become more and more unstoppable. And the way it's roguelike is because you just go and there's just waves. You start off with very few enemies. You just go and go until there's just waves and waves and waves. And eventually you just get so crowded you can't move. And then you go back to the menu, you buy an upgrade, and that helps you a little bit. And then you just keep going. And I kind of I'd seen this before and wasn't interested until Dustin, of all people, suggested it to me, because I'm a firm believer in, like, it's okay to play a game just to have fun. Whereas Dustin's like, if it doesn't have a deep meaning or anime girls in it, I don't care about it. And when Dustin suggested it to me specifically, I think probably because he knows I'm just a I'll play anything kind of person. I was like, okay, I got to give this a shot. And between the sounds and the effects and everything, it's just chill. Like it's a lot of fun. Actually, it's not chill. It's very frantic, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of adrenaline rush, not adrenaline, dopamine rush, I think is the right word I'm looking for.
I was going to say that when you were done. It sounds like dopamine the game.
It's dopamine the game. And the reason I wanted to bring it up, not only because it's a Game Pass game and it's specifically for PC Game Pass, which I know that the show is mostly Xbox focused, but is because this is a very simple game, and I'm actually a little surprised it's like an early access mode, or what do they call that? Game preview mode on Xbox, because this seems like a game to me that could easily run on a phone. And I have no doubt that it will come to Xbox in the future. As a matter of fact, maybe because of how hectic things get, I'm not sure if it would work on cloud, but this even seems like something that could be played on your phone and you wouldn't hate it. It's a lot of fun. I've had a good time with a little bit of it I've played, probably, I don't know, between 5 and 6 hours. And it's one of those games that you pick it up and you're like, well, I'm just going to do one run, and it's going to take me about 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how good I do. And then like an hour and a half goes by and you're like, shit, what did I just do? Like, I can't believe I just spent that much time.
That's funny.
There's no story that I can detect. There's no deeper meaning. You're just some sort of cool warrior person killing bad things, and it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of dopamine. It's cool in every way. It's dangerous too, because
it does sound dangerous.
You waste a lot of time. Yeah.
Sounds like a good time though. It's a quick download, I imagine, just by taking one look at the game.
Yeah,
like
absolutely. Yeah, I think this would be awesome on Steam Deck personally. So.
Oh, yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
You said it's just a one input game, just move around the left stick.
I mean, in the menus, you have to like select things, but you're basically just moving around, and your attacks are auto attacks. So like you pick up. I probably should have elaborated on this.
Like pressing buttons to do things in game. Interesting.
No, sorry, Maddie. There's no dialogue options either. But like one of the characters, you start out with like a whip, and the whip, you can upgrade over time. But then as you go and you level up, you can pick like a different weapon. And by the time you're 10 levels in, you might have 4 different weapons, all shooting out in different ways that do different things. One's like a fire attack, one's a whip, one's garlic to stop the enemies from coming in. Like that kind of thing.
That's funny.
So yeah, there's. It's very simple, and it's certainly not going to rock the industry or shake anybody's worldview. But if you just want something that's a lot of fun, then it's a good pick.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Sounds cool. I've seen a little bit of it. It looks fun.
Yeah.
Time for a couple of questions to conclude this episode. We start off with Deadpool Huff, who writes in, "Hey, Dukes, considering 2023 looks completely front-loaded, how do you expect the back half will shape up? Are we in store for another underwhelming fall release schedule, or does that not matter anymore?" I definitely wanted to get your 2 cents on this, Ben, because heading into 2022, I imagine everyone agreed, we're going to have a banger year. You just looked at everything that was coming from that January to April window. It just looked like there was nonstop hits.
Right.
And then May happened, and there was nothing for a while. And now we're back. Things are picking up again. For a lot of people, this fall has been underwhelming, and I would agree. There hasn't been a lot of tremendous stuff outside of A Plague Tale, which was phenomenal. But what do you feel? How do you feel things are going to shake out in 2023 release-wise in a day and age where we're seeing a lot more delays? We're seeing a lot more COVID-focused related delays.
Yeah.
Do you think this is going to be a factor going into next year, or do you think it's finally going to be so many things were in development for so long that this just happens to be the year they're all ready to go?
Yeah, I think it's the latter that you said there, that we've missed so many things up to this point, and so many things have been delayed into next year. And I would not doubt that some of the things that are announced for early next year are going to get delayed into later next year, but I still think they'll be next year. But the problem here is that if I have to decide whether I'm picking you or Cog's fantasy team for whether stuff comes out, like whether the fall looks beefy or not, because I think you put a lot of the big hitters in the fall.
I put everything later in the year. I'm all in on my mindset that everything's happening in 2023.
Well, yeah, you did that for sure, but I think you put a lot of them at the end of the year, and
yes.
Yeah. So, and this question is, it looks front loaded. How do you think the back will shape up? I mean, again, I go back to what I said earlier about like there's always something for me to play, but I definitely think we're probably gonna have Starfield in the latter half of the year. I think we're going
Eat
to
that, Cog. Eat that. Sorry, go on.
I think we're going to be hearing in the beginning of the year, because the showcase we had earlier this year was about things in the next 12 months. And I think the 12-month point is about the middle of the year. And I think at that show, we hear a lot of, or maybe before, we hear about a lot of stuff coming later in the year. And by that point, if they don't announce it till July that there's a release date, it's unlikely that it's getting delayed into the following year. So personally, I think the end of the year is going to be packed. And I also think that we're going to have plenty to play because Game Pass isn't slowing down. They're just keep adding more stuff and more quality stuff at that.
Yeah, I'm not really too worried about that either, Deadpool. And I agree with you, Ben, because if this year taught us anything about Xbox, and even when they don't have exclusives, of course, it feels like we have that missing pillar in the middle of it all that's going to uphold everything. But, just Game Pass really showed to me this year that you will always have something to play on Xbox. And especially as this year ramped up and they got a lot of indies in there, like you had Proteus and Moonscars. And I know that's not going to be everyone's jam for sure, but their indie support's been fantastic. And it's left us with a lot to play, more than I think any of us expected in what was considered a very dead year, another punting year. For Microsoft, I think has been really anything but. So for me, I think if you're here and you're listening and you're in the Xbox ecosystem wholeheartedly, I think you're going to be playing more than ever come next year, come fall of next year, because you already know on some capacity, we can't say for sure what, because I just don't trust these companies anymore. But we have to say almost definitely 99.999% sure that Xbox will deliver at least 2 exclusives next year that we've been looking forward to, whether they are Starfield and Redfall, Forza, Hellblade, whatever that mixture may be. We should at least get a couple of them out finally. And I imagine Xbox would like to have a nice top to bottom year for once. One thing they have sorely missed is the front half of the year. That's where a lot of my intrigue is. And I imagine if they had anything big coming out, then they would have, beyond Starfield and Redfall, they would have said so. So it's good to keep an eye locked in on Game Pass, because I think that's what they're thinking moving forward. Is that's almost to them like getting a game exclusively, like Lies of P. To me, Lies of P is an Xbox game because it's day one Game Pass. It's coming out on PlayStation. It's coming out everywhere. But to me, that looks like an Xbox game because it's Game Pass, and there's that association. Plague Tale. Yep.
Absolutely. I don't even remember that it's on. I played the first one because it was with my PlayStation Plus subscription. I played the first one on PlayStation, but I don't even think of the second one being on PlayStation because it's on Game Pass.
Yeah, it's a quiet brand association. So I know I've spun off course a bit for you, Deadpool, on your question here about, what we're going to play and what we should look forward to at the end of the year. But I guess my answer for those who are listening, and of course many are, like deeply entrenched in the Xbox ecosystem, is I don't think this year's problems will come close to repeating next year. I think we're going to have almost too much to play, if my personal feeling ends up being true. But I think the back half is definitely going to shape up to be stronger. Unfortunately, though, one of those games I thought was going to be KOTOR Remake, but that was unfortunately shelved. So, for me, fall 2023 is already a wash, but I'm looking forward to everything else. All right, we got, funny enough, we were talking about Starfield. We got one last question here from Stephen Richard to wrap things up. What's good, Dukes? With last week's conversation about the potential of Starfield to slip into Q4 of next year, do you guys believe that adds additional pressure to the perfection goal? Everyone knows that this game needs to be perfect when it launches, so the delay to next year hurt. However, it was rationalized by the thought of taking 6 to 8 months to polish. But if they were to delay an additional 4 to 6 months, what would the storyline be, and what would the extra pressures feel like for developers? If the initial delay wasn't enough, what would we have had come 11/11? And would it speak to its depth and scope, or rather its buggy and unpolished nature that Bethesda has unfortunately earned the reputation for? Love the show, boys. And side note, absolutely love that the fantasy draft write-in turned into what it has. Hope you guys continue to do it, because at least for me, it adds more flavor and spice to these conversations, including the drafted games. However, shame on you both for not drafting a Plague Tale Requiem. Hope you guys have a damn, I should have picked him up off the waivers before his massive game kind of day. You know what? I'm glad now that I didn't pick a Plague Tale, because seeing the reviews, journalists failed me on that one. Someone gave it a 4 out of fucking 10. I was like, are you kidding? 4? 4? I don't. You like to argue review scores. Maybe I do, because I tend to bitch at least once a month on this stuff. But bro, 4 out of 10, I would have been losing a cog. So I'm happy I made the good business decision there. But Ben, back to the Q4 Starfield conversation here. What kind of pressure does Bethesda face? We know they need to nail this. It's safe to say this is the most important game of this generation for Xbox. If they were to say we're delaying it again, we've seen this industry trip on itself time in, time out, over and over, saying, oh, take your time. Then when they delay it, people get pissed. and then it gets that Halo Infinite energy. It's got to come out. Everyone's saying it's got to come out, but does it? So I want to pass it to you here.
Yeah.
What do you feel about this potential delay scenario that we are being hypothetical about, or it is a hypothetical situation rather? And if it does happen, what kind of pressure does Bethesda and Xbox face? And does it change from what they face now?
Yeah. I mean, Stephen, I think this is a good insight because he asked, does it add additional pressure to its perfection goal because if it gets delayed? And I think it already has that pressure. I don't think we have to wait for it to get delayed again to have that much pressure because, like Maddie said, this is one of, if not the biggest game of their generation. It's definitely going to have all the eyes on it just by nature of it being a Bethesda Game Studios game. And it can't come out in a broken state. It can't come out in a standard Bethesda game state. I mean, to be brutally honest about it, they haven't always had the best releases. So I think that if it does get delayed, again, they better make damn sure that it is actually for pure polish and to get bugs out. I just don't see a scenario, though, where they put out Halo early, even after it was delayed, but they put out Halo early over their release date, and then they delay Starfield a year and then another quarter. I can't imagine that unless they've learned some lessons. I don't know. It will not be good if it gets delayed again. And not because people won't be patient, which they won't, but because it is a Bethesda game. And then when they delay it, like every game's going to have a bug at least in it, right? And if the game comes out and there's anything at all wrong with it, it's going to get ripped to shreds even more. And Maddie, you've been through this scenario of a Bethesda Game Studio game coming out many times in your career. So I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I've been through a high and a low when you think about it, just as a content creator, because Fallout 4 was like, of course I was 18 at the time or 17. So it's definitely like a could do no wrong moment for me. But I do remember the zeitgeist being like, this is awesome. And then the hype wore off and I was like, this is good, not great. Whereas 76 was very much what we're trying to avoid here. Like, this is falling apart by the seams and was an insult to the customers that they would even try to sell it at all. And I remember immediately the conversations were like, turn it to free to play, don't sell this shit. And I guess they borderline did for the price they had to sell it for, and then Game Pass helping it out, that people just don't want to pay for this game. And it's a reason why they don't charge for content, by the way. Like, they know there will be a shitstorm if they say, okay, after 4 years with the game and these 3 revenue models, that we're going to start charging you money for it. So being through those 2 launches, as we all have been, to me, it says that they want this to be different. I almost view it as a new era of Bethesda in that regard. Like, this needs to be the standard moving forward for them. Like, the launch quality, I should say, needs to be the standard. No modders will fix this, modders will do that. Modders can improve this or that. That's fine if Bethesda talks about it that way and the community approaches it that way. And by that, I mean like mechanics. Like, they talked a bit about their fuel system. If they want to make it more of a survival game, that's fine. That's not really on Bethesda on a design faux pas level. Like, I'm talking bugs, glitches, the infamous unofficial patch that's in every Bethesda game. I just feel you got to avoid that. But what we have to be careful of is, while we set that up, I believe David Jaffe said this, and it was true, is I think you can have ambition and polish. I'm not saying Elden Ring was perfectly polished, but for all Elden Ring did and continued to blow me away with, it was, in my experience, very polished. I had some issues with the design, but that's very different from the polish of the game. So it's possible, but David Jaffe did say you either want the ambition and want them to shoot for the stars, or you want this kind of Naughty Dog style type polish. And I think there is a middle ground there that you can find, especially in these hub-based games that we're seeing more and more, like the Outer Worlds. But I do think Bethesda is going to shoot for ambition here, and with that will come bugs. That's not excusing, hand-waving, any of that shit. I'm not doing that for them. not this time around. You're going to have 27, 28-year-old Natty on your back, Bethesda, not the 18-year-old anymore. So, it's one of those things where I feel they need to set themselves up in a chance to win, but people need to understand that when a game goes this wide and is a dramatic overhaul and a new engine, there are going to be some kinks that they have to work out by default.
Yeah.
It's just minimizing how many are there, because bugs always exist in games. I'm sure, Ben, you know this. Bugs always exist in games. Is how well you can hide them,
right?
And how noticeable certain ones are. So,
and how well people can find them.
Yes, absolutely. There may be some existing. It's happened countless times we've read about where they thought it was polished. They put it out, and someone just found one exploit, and that was it.
Yep,
and that hurts. That's scary too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where I stand on it all. But anything you'd like to add on this Starfield conversation?
It needs to be good. I'm excited for it. That's about all I have.
Hell
Past
yes,
that.
brother.
Yep.
So that's everything we got for this episode of Defining Duke, from Obsidian to Bethesda to Fallout to Starfield. It's been a jam-packed episode of talking about the future of Xbox RPGs. But Ben, thank you so much for joining me in this episode. It's been a blast as always speaking with you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course. And ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you listening. If you got this deep, I feel like we got to use a hashtag this week, Ben, that deals with Fallout. That was a really passionate, strong conversation. I was thinking Nuka DD.
Oh, let's do it. Sure.
You like that? All right. Cool.
I like it.
So NUKA, for those who don't know how to spell it, DD. Use the hashtag on Twitter. I'm at G27status. Is your handle just Ben Smith, or it has numbers in it, right?
Oh, no. I wish it was just Ben Smith.
Yes.
2588 at the end of it.
All right. Ben Smith, 2588. Find us on Twitter. Tag us. Use the hashtag NukaDD. If you don't want to go through all that effort, that's fine. Throw it in the comments. Let us know your thoughts on the episode. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you, and we will catch you next week for episode 95 of Defining Duke at Xbox Podcast. Peace out.
Bye.
Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from the United States of America. The show is conceived by Matthew Mr. Matty Plays Schroeder and me, Colin Moriarty, and is written and produced by Matthew Schroeder. Matty's co-host is Barry Lord Cognito Eversley. Defining Duke's executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Defining Duke, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level on Patreon, and we're thankful for your kindness and generosity.